Chapter 1835. Chin-Chi knew that she didn't have much to offer. The students were still very poor, and her target was the young miss of Wagwa Water Curtain Group. No matter how much money she offered, the other party probably wouldn't be interested, right? So before coming to the student union, she had specially asked the other students for their opinions. In the end, she had come to the conclusion that she could use the convenience store's privileges to entice her with snacks. When Super Chen had told Chin-Chin about this back then, she had found it inconceivable. How could the young miss of Wagwa Water Curtain Group be interested in the snacks in the convenience store? She hadn't expected it to be so effective. The first step had finally been taken. Because her request was very strange, the key was whether she could smoothly convey it to the head of the great church to help her out. As she pondered this, Chin-Chin took out her phone, opened the photo album, and looked at the screenshot inside. It was a screenshot of a short video of a girl with glasses and a long ponytail. Lotus Sun took a closer look and then compared it to Chin-Chin's appearance. In the end, she revealed a suspicious expression. "This isn't you, right?" Chin-Chin became excited. "That's right. But don't you think she looks a lot like me?" Lotus Sun nodded. "Indeed. They're practically twins." "Chin-Chin, I suddenly discovered it on a short video platform a week ago. I was very surprised at the time. I never thought that there would be someone in the world who looks exactly like me." Lotus Sun nodded and immediately understood what Chin-Chin meant. "So you want to find her?" "Chin-Chin, I asked my parents if I had a younger sister or elder sister apart from me. In the end, they gave me a good scolding. They insisted that I was an only child." Lotus Sun sighed. "After all, the chances of finding someone who looks almost exactly like you and is a long-lost sister are really low. But I still want to find her." Chin-Chin didn't give up. "On one hand, I want to satisfy my curiosity, and on the other hand, I really have a feeling that this girl might be related to me. It looks like she's about the same age as you. So you think she might also be a student? So you want to use the great church's influence in all the major schools to find this person, right?" At this point, Lotus Sun suddenly understood everything. However, there was still one thing that she couldn't figure out. She felt that Chin-Chin hadn't told her the whole story. "Student Chin-Chin, if you really want me to ask the great church's leader for help, it's best if you tell him everything from the beginning to the end." Lotus Sun said, "I feel like you're hiding something." These words caused Chin-Chin to fall silent. After a moment of silence, she hesitantly opened a short video app and typed the name on the screenshot into the search box. Lotus Sun and Wang Ling saw this scene at the same time. When Chin-Chin pressed the confirm button, something strange happened. Immediately, a system notification popped up on the short video application. "No such person found." "Did they change their names?" Wang Ling asked. "If it's just a name change, the user's UID will not change," Chin-Chin quickly replied. "But even after I entered the UID, I still can't find her. So it's cancelled." Lotus Sun was also puzzled. "I don't think it's cancelled. I've been observing her for several days. She mainly posts food videos on her short video app, and it's very regular. Every night at around 6 o'clock, she posts a video of herself eating delicious food. There's no waste, and there's no inappropriate content. It definitely wasn't the platform that deleted her." The more Chin-Chin spoke, the more solemn her expression became. "The day before I couldn't find her account, she said that she would meet me at 6 o'clock tomorrow night. Although she doesn't have a lot of fans following her, how could a perfectly fine person just disappear like that?" The whole thing did give off a very strange feeling. After hearing this, Wang Ling and Lotus Sun looked at each other for a while. Then, Lotus Sun nodded seriously and looked at Chin-Chin. "Then, student Chin-Chin, I understand your request. I'll try to get in touch with the leader of the Great Church. If there are any new developments, I'll contact you in time. Thank you so much. No matter what happens in the end, I'll still pay you the commission fee, said Chin. The commission fee wasn't a big problem. The main thing was that there was something very wrong with the incident itself. It wasn't just Lotus Sun, even Wang Ling's curiosity was piqued, and he sensed that something wasn't quite right. If it was as Chin said, it would indeed be a little strange for such a living person to suddenly cancel her account. Furthermore, this person might have some sort of connection with Chin, so it was normal for Chin to have misgivings. It was like watching someone else in the same world suddenly vanish from the face of the earth. Perhaps it was an instinctive reaction, and it was only natural for her to be worried. But then again, this was the first time that Lotus Sun had taken the initiative to accept a real commission from the student party. Even she herself didn't know how things would develop in the end. Right now, she could only do her best. Jiudao and High School's Great Church branch very quickly received an invitation from Lotus Sun for a joint investigation. Having an elite like Sparrow by the side of Jiudao and High School's head of Great Church branch, Jiudao Sasaki, was a huge boost to the investigation. Lotus Sun's train of thought was very clear. She planned to have Sparrow start with that short video app and see what on earth was going on. In the end, less than 10 minutes later, Sparrow sent news. Lotus Sun was flabbergasted. Because according to Sparrow's investigation, the short video app had already been hacked by a hacker. Furthermore, the other party's goal was very clear, to directly delete the account of the girl who looked very much like classmate Chin. This was a deliberate act, but an ordinary person wouldn't be able to do anything about it in this situation, and could only interpret it as an official ban. But the truth was that this had nothing to do with the officials at all. Hacking into a short video app just to delete a girl's account. Lotus Sun frowned when she received the news, and felt that things weren't as simple as they seemed. The only way to get to the bottom of the matter now was to find out where the girl was. But because the account information had already been deleted, there was no way to investigate it at all. The only way to get to the bottom of the matter now was to find out where the girl was. But because the account information had already been deleted, there was no way to investigate it at all. But the only way to break through was the unknown hacker who had hacked into the short video app. Can I entrust this to Brother Wang Ming? At that moment, Lotus Sun looked at Wang Ling. Wang Ling nodded. He and Lotus Sun were thinking the same thing. Chapter 1836. This was Wang Ling's first time encountering a commission from a student. In the past, he had always avoided it because he felt that it would cause him trouble, and to a certain extent, risked exposing his true strength. But now, Wang Ling really felt that he had changed. Perhaps it was because he had experienced too many earth-shattering events, but when it came to this kind of small commission, he felt indifferent. As for exposing his strength, in any case, Lotus Sun now knew his situation and would cover for him, so he didn't have to worry too much. Of course, the most important thing was that Wang Ling realized that he wasn't a cold-blooded person. When he wore the Dao Talisman seal, his emotions didn't fluctuate much. When he was in primary and middle school, he had often been scolded for being a cold-blooded animal, but life in high school seemed to be different. He realized that he sometimes liked to meddle in other people's business. When he accepted this commission with Lotus Sun, Wang Ling was well aware that it definitely wasn't because of the commission fee the other party had promised. Did he look like someone who wouldn't budge at the mention of crispy noodle snacks? Although Wang Ling didn't know why he had become so warm-hearted, he was in a very good mood. Because this was probably the closest he had ever been to a normal person. In the afternoon, it was Old Antique's Theory of History class, which specifically mentioned the conversion between spirit stones and immortal gold. Holding a piece of chalk, Old Antique wrote a long series of conversion formulas on the blackboard, leaving everyone speechless. This was supposed to be Old Pan's job in the Dao Talismans class, but in the end, Old Antique had snatched it away. On the other hand, Old Antique's cultivation knowledge was indeed very extensive. In Wang Ling's view, Old Antique wasn't just good at teaching theory of history, he was also competent in other subjects. He was a true jack of all trades. I saw the formulas in the paper in middle school. It's not a test now, but you can take note of them if you're interested. After writing, Old Antique habitually wiped his chalk-covered hands with a rag on the table, and then continued to say, there are two ways to extract spirit stones. One is to collect spirit ore and process it with a machine, and the other is to create spirit stones by absorbing spirit chi from the natural world and injecting it into a machine. The created spirit stones can then be combined with some other materials and transformed into the more valuable immortal gold. The former is more efficient, but the natural spirit ores are often limited. If they are overexploited, sooner or later, there will be a situation where there are no ores to use. As for the artificial input of spirit stones, although it is inexhaustible, the efficiency is very low. On the other hand, if one were to engage in this work for a long time, it may have a certain impact on one's cultivation foundation, or even damage one's spirit root. Actually, Wang Ling had heard this from grenade-throwing senior immortal before. Previously, when the Heavenly Hound was still under the control of the Sacred Race had planned to have the Heavenly Hound launch a Spirit Stone trade war against the Huaguo Water Curtain Group. In the end, the Heavenly Hound was swallowed up by the Battle Sect before they could do so. Back then, Heavenly Dog had planned to empty the Spirit Stone market and cause Huaguo Water Curtain Group and Battle Sect to suffer losses for no reason. Wang Ling himself had also been prepared to save the market. It was nothing more than artificially created spirit stones. With his output power, if he were to continue producing spirit stones for a day, he might just become the richest man in the world. At this time, the class was talking about the problem of artificial input of spiritual energy to create spirit stones that could harm the body. Wang Ling wasn't worried about this at all. Although his output power was high, it wouldn't have any impact on the body. There wouldn't be a problem with regular input of spirit energy into spirit stones. As long as one didn't work continuously or was fatigued, there wouldn't be any impact. What he was worried about was that some black-hearted factories would continue to exploit the labor force in order to make money. Doesn't the country prohibit it? Someone raised his hand and asked curiously. There are clear rules on working hours for artificial spirit stones. All cultivators who are employed to input spirit energy into machines can't work more than 5 hours a day, and have to change shifts when the 5 hours are up, Old Antique said. This is a hard and fast rule for all regular spirit stone processing plants. If they don't follow this standard, once the regulatory authorities find out, the company and the processing plant involved will be fined up to 30 times the price. Teacher, you said regular, but are there any that aren't? Super Chen asked at that moment. The market is so big, it's inevitable that there will be a few fish that slip through the net. After all, there's a saying, the most profitable projects are in the cultivation criminal law. For the sake of profit, people sometimes take risks out of desperation and do things that they clearly know are against the rules, but they still have to bite the bullet and do it. All parties have been cracking down on illegal factories over the years, and it's been very effective. Saying this, Old Antique couldn't help sighing. Come to think of it, a few days ago, I saw a satirical cartoon drawn by a very famous CG cartoonist online, specifically targeting those black-hearted factories. Wu Hapisho? That's right, that's him. Old Antique nodded. But very quickly, this CG cartoon was censored. I don't know if it poked someone's sore spot or not. What on earth did teacher Wu Hapisho draw? This is a short cartoon about a black-hearted factory boss who uses technical means to create a large number of cloned cultivators to continuously produce spirit stones for himself. Old Antique said with a reminiscing expression, those poor cloned cultivators are constantly squeezed until their bodies are overdrawn. At that time, the black-hearted boss will unhesitatingly abandon them. Their bodies will be broken down and sent back to the furnace to be rebuilt as new clones. Then, they will continue to work for the black-hearted boss, forming a cycle. After the story was told, everyone in the class shuddered at the same time. There was no doubt that this was a short cartoon with a slightly thrilling, terrifying and suspenseful flavor. Just listening to it made people shudder. As expected of teacher Wu Hapicio, someone in class exclaimed in admiration. Usually, when everyone went to school, they would be faced with homework when they got home. It was fine on weekends, but on a normal working day, almost no one would pay much attention to what was happening online. If it was posted and then deleted, it wouldn't attract much attention. Everyone in class sank into discussion at Old Antique's words. But Wang Ling's and Lotus Sun's expressions were clearly a little gloomy. Wang Ling always had a very strange feeling about Old Antique. Every time he felt that Old Antique was deliberately hinting at something in class, he also felt that it was just some kind of strange coincidence. Clones, and that short video blogger who looked exactly like classmate Chin, but had disappeared into thin air. Wang Ling had a hunch that there might be some kind of connection between the two. Set a small goal first, like 1 second. Remember, Bookseller's House. Chapter 1837. It was still the Cultivation Training Center. After school that day, Lotus Sun immediately put on the nine-tailed fox mask, changed into traditional Chinese clothes, and rushed over. She had asked Jiang Yingying to train here. The whole training session took about an hour, and she had to meet up with Wang Ling and Chin right after that. She had wanted to refuse at first. But she had already stood Jiang Yingying up several times because she had gone abroad a few days ago. If she didn't come today, she was worried that Jiang Yingying would become suspicious. Pretty sister. Jiang Yingying wasn't idle either. She arrived at the training center 10 or so minutes ahead of Lotus Sun, and didn't waste a single minute as she directly started to wield the big sword according to Lotus Sun's instructions. When Lotus Sun arrived, Jiang Yingying greeted her with a smile on her face, beads of sweat rolling down her cheeks. You're working hard. Then let's hurry up and train, Lotus Sun said. Okay. After practicing for 10 or so minutes, Jiang Yingying suddenly asked, Pretty sister, what's wrong? Why do I feel like you're a little distracted today? Sorry, a little. Lotus Sun admitted bluntly. Even a disciple could see that her Shifu was absent-minded, especially when she was wearing a mask. This kind of absent-mindedness was a little too obvious. The reason for her absent-mindedness was very simple. Maybe it was because of Chin, but more than that, it was because of Wang Ling. She actually hadn't expected Wang Ling to be willing to directly intervene in this matter and participate in the first great church mission with her. He had thought that Wang Ling would definitely find this matter very boring and ignore it. In the end, this blockhead didn't play by the rules at all. Lotus Sun's heart was a little flustered. Because she wasn't very sure if going on a mission together was considered having a good impression of her. Yingying, do you remember what I mentioned to you last time? I know, that's senior brother's boyfriend. Jiang Yingying laughed. I knew that pretty sister's absent-mindedness today probably had something to do with him. Lotus Sun hesitated, then said, It's like this, I'm going on a mission with him. The point is that he has never been interested in such a mission before. Then isn't this progress? You think it's progress? I think so. Jiang Yingying said, If I don't have any feelings for you, how could I go on a mission with you? There's a commission fee, and it's a commission fee that he can't refuse. Hey, so it turns out that the cultivators of the upper echelons are also obsessed with money? No matter what, Sister Rongrong, I think this is a great opportunity. At the very least, you can use this mission to test the waters. But I'm afraid I'll mess it up. I don't think so. If this senior brother is still willing to carry out the mission with you when you're acting rashly, doesn't that prove that he's interested in you? All of a sudden, Lotus Sun came to a realization. Jiang Yingying didn't seem to have a lot of experience in love. Instead, she was purely a naive girl who had read too many romantic dramas and mangas. Nowadays, the setting of a rash female lead isn't very likable. And this was also one of the reasons why so many girls like to watch TV shows where beautiful men appreciated each other. Lotus Sun dropped her forehead into her hand. What everyone wanted to see wasn't the plot of a radiant male lead rescuing a naive and sweet Mary Sue who acted rashly. What they wanted to see was a sweet interaction between a normal female lead and a normal male lead who wouldn't cause trouble. In short, after talking with Jiang Yingying, Lotus Sun understood one thing. That was that Jiang Yingying's love experience didn't have any substantial reference value. She could even reverse the situation based on Jiang Yingying's experience. In class, Wang Ling and Lotus Sun were inspired by what old Antique had hinted at. Now that they had been inspired, the next step was to verify their ideas. First of all, it was impossible for a living person to disappear for no reason. If that video blogger had really run into danger, Wang Ling felt that there would definitely be some clues left behind. In the modern cultivation world, there were too many ways to uncover the truth. Even if Wang Ling didn't use his strange spells, the cultivation police would still be able to find a flaw with their existing technology. Corpse-dissolving water, which had once been popular in the cultivation world, actually also existed now. Pouring a drop of it on a corpse after a murder would cause it to completely evaporate in a very short period of time, leaving no trace behind. In troubled times, this method had once been a must-have magic weapon for major forces to secretly compete with each other. However, this miraculous liquid that could destroy corpses and leave no traces behind could now be detected by modern cultivation techniques. For example, the elemental camera. After a cultivator died, the spirit root in their body would often leave traces of the elements in the air that corresponded to the spirit root. By using the elemental camera to capture a possible crime scene, one could see the outline of a corpse outlined by natural elements. Of course, it would be even more convenient for Wang Ling to go over. He didn't need a camera, he could do it with the king's eye. The gray and white cafe on Student Street near number 60 High School had already become a gathering point for Grey Church disciples. After her training with Jiang Yingying, Lotus Sun had immediately rushed over. At that moment, Chen Qin and Wang Ling had already been waiting in the cafe for a long time. On the way over, Lotus Sun had given herself a Grey Church leader's decree, which was mainly for Chen Qin to read. It clearly stated that the leader of the Grey Church was already aware of this matter, and had given full authority to Lotus Sun, the head of the Grey Church branch at number 60 High School, as well as Grey Church disciple Wang Ling, to handle the matter. It was quite amazing that the Grey Church had been founded in the first place because of the essay called Substitute, which Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch had written for Wang Ling at the Nine Dragon Mountain Conclave, and because of the golden phrase, a speck of ash in the age. In the essay, Wang Ling had been packaged as a composition genius. But the truth was that most of the disciples who joined the Grey Church thought that the essay had been written by the leader of the Grey Church. Naturally, Wang Ling's tampering with most people's memories in order to rationalize everything was part of this. Now that he was just a Grey Church disciple, this was completely reasonable. After all, he was just a composition writer. What the hell did the Grey Church know? Student Lotus Sun, you're finally here. Chen Qin and Wang Ling had already been sitting in the cafe's private room for a long time. As soon as Lotus Sun arrived, she looked like she was about to cry, as if she had seen a life-saving straw. What's wrong? Lotus Sun was startled. Student Wang Ling and I have been sitting here for a long time, but he actually hasn't said a word. Classmate Chen Qin looked worried. I suspect that classmate Wang Ling is broken. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun. Chapter 1838. Wang Ling had never thought that his silent contemplation would actually cast such a huge psychological shadow on Chen Qin. Usually, when Wang Ling was thinking carefully about something, he would enter a meditative state like just now. Even if his eyes were open, everything in front of him would temporarily turn into nothingness, like a cloud of smoke and fog that constantly changed in front of his eyes as his thoughts ran through his mind, thus giving him certain hints. His hearing would also be isolated to eliminate all external disturbances, and it could be said that he was truly undistracted. As for his body, it would automatically enter a state of being seized by the system. At that time, his body would automatically identify malicious intent around him and enter a 100% evasion mode, causing all attacks to miss and directly entering a state of ineffectiveness. Wang Ling had a premonition that this matter was very complicated, so he had activated this meditative mode to think about it. Generally speaking, it was only the final exams that qualified him to use this ability. It was just that Wang Ling had overlooked one thing, and that was that Qin was still here and had been frightened by his mode. "Sorry," Wang Ling said. He rarely took the initiative to apologize to anyone, and this was his first time doing so. When he saw Qin's expression relax again, Wang Ling somehow felt that he was a little closer to being a normal person. "Classmate Qin, don't be too afraid." When Wang Ling is thinking, he's like this. "Well, actually, I'm not afraid. I'm just curious." Curious. Why is a person who is as focused as an old monk in meditation when he's thinking about something, why does he score average in every exam? Super Chen keeps telling me that he suspects Wang Ling is deliberately keeping his scores down. Wang Ling, hearing this, Lotus Sun laughed and hurriedly changed the subject. "But we're not here to talk about exams today. You said earlier that you've sorted out new clues." "Yes." As Qin spoke, she took out a stack of washed photos from her pink school bag. In addition to the cell phone screenshots that Wang Ling and Lotus Sun had already seen, they found that among the clues provided this time were some photos of the video blogger's daily life. "Where did you get these photos?" Lotus Sun asked curiously. "These are the photos she posted on other social media platforms before the video was deleted. I found them through her ID. But it seems that she's already logged out of other social media platforms." "I don't know if she was logged out," Qin said. "Why didn't you take it out earlier?" "Because I remembered wrongly. These photos were in another phone. Later, I used the cloud drive function of the phone I'm using now to find them." Wang Ling looked through each photo carefully, and finally fixed his eyes on one. It was a photo of the vlogger and a man in a Taoist costume. Unfortunately, the face of the Taoist was covered with a thick layer of mosaic. Seeing that Wang Ling was particularly concerned about this photo, Lotus Sun asked tacitly, "Do you remember when this photo was released?" "I remember I saved it half a month ago." "But she should have posted the photos on the internet much earlier. Also, this is the only photo she took with someone on that platform," Qin said. In other words, the Taoist priest in the photo might be the last person to see her. After obtaining a new lead from Qin, Wang Ling and Lotus Sun immediately set out on the next step of their operation. Wang Ling took Lotus Sun to Line 19, the terminus of the subway at Qingshan Lake. It was on the outskirts of the city, and there were almost no people living there. There were only a few people camping there on weekends, and almost no one could be seen on weekdays. Seeing that there was no one in the carriage, Lotus Sun asked cautiously, "Wang Ling, you should be able to restore the mosaic in the photo, right?" Wang Ling nodded, then handed over the photo in his hand. Lotus Sun was stunned to find that Wang Ling had actually removed the mosaic. Standing next to the vlogger who looked very much like Qin was a female Taoist priest. She didn't look very old, and looked to be about the age of a high school student. She wore a long white robe, and her beautiful black hair was coiled up with a purple Taoist hairpin. She held a pink horsetail whisk in her hand and wore cute straw sandals. Lotus Sun was flabbergasted. She was clearly such a cute girl, but she was actually a female Taoist priest. If this girl was in a proper high school, she felt that she would definitely be the dream girl of many boys. But on the other hand, she breathed a sigh of relief in her heart. Good, good, she was a female Taoist priest. Otherwise, she would have had more strange competitors. But having said that, there was one thing that astonished Lotus Sunday. Wang Ling was actually able to tell which Taoist temple this cute little female Taoist priest came from just by looking at the photo. That was a little too inconceivable. Nowadays, Taoist temples mostly wore plain clothes like cyan, white or black, and they didn't have any special logos on them. There were more than 100,000 Taoist temples of all sizes in the country, and each one had a different name. Apart from the fact that most Taoist temples were located on mountains, there didn't seem to be much in common. She felt that Wang Ling had probably deduced this female Taoist priest's identity before. Who would have thought that when they arrived at the entrance of the Taoist temple, when a child who looked to be only 13 or 14 years old but was dressed in Taoist robes saw Wang Ling, a stunned expression appeared on his face. He hurriedly put down his broom and ran into the Taoist temple, shouting, "It's Scholar Wang. Scholar Wang is here. Senior Sister Yu Qing." Lotus Sun's expression froze slightly at this sudden announcement, and only after a moment of daze did she see the Taoist temple's plaque clearly. The 3 words, Wind and Thunder Manor, were written on it. This was a Taoist temple that Lotus Sun had never heard of before. She knew about Qingshan Lake, but she had never known that there was such a Taoist temple on a mountain about 5 kilometers away from it. A trace of doubt flitted across her mind. Wang Ling had found his way here just by looking at the photo. Lotus Sun had thought that this was the result of a deduction, but judging from the little Taoist priest's reaction just now, she suddenly felt that perhaps Wang Ling and this remote little Taoist temple had some kind of strange connection. No way, it couldn't be that coincidental, right? Her heart was pounding. At that moment, the petite and adorable female Taoist priest from the photo walked out of the Taoist temple with a smile on her face, her pink horsetail whisk and her straw sandals. Long time no see, Scholar Wang. She took the initiative to step forward and looked at Wang Ling's face without any hesitation. There seemed to be some ambiguity in her eyes. After a long while, she turned her gaze to Lotus Sun on the side, then flung the horsetail whisk aside and stretched out her hand. "Hello, female Taoist priest, I am Yu Qing, the eldest senior sister of Wind and Thunder Taoist Temple." Chapter 1839. Come to think of it, Wang Ling and Yu Qing's ill-fated relationship had started a long, long time ago. Yu Qing had been Wang Ling's kindergarten classmate. That was something that had happened a long time ago. When Wang Ling was a child, his parents always liked to jokingly ask him how many husbands and wives he had in kindergarten. Even during his kindergarten years, he couldn't avoid this habit. Yu Qing had been one of the targets of Father Wang, Mother Wang and Grandfather Wang's jokes. When they were in primary school, Yu Qing even kept in touch with Wang Ling, and sometimes even took the initiative to visit the Wang family's small villa. Later, when Father and Mother Wang heard that Yu Qing had moved to another city, the relationship between the two families had become strained. It wasn't until the year Wang Ling entered high school that he heard about Yu Qing's recent situation from a junior high classmate. It was said that Yu Qing had made a bold decision to become a Taoist priest. Wang Ling was clearly a little dumbfounded when he heard this news. He knew that Yu Qing's brain had always been abnormal, but he hadn't expected it to be this abnormal. But very quickly, Wang Ling regained his composure. But Yu Qing didn't know much about Wang Ling himself, and didn't know that he had a heaven-defying ability. It was just that her intuition told her that compared with ordinary cultivators, Wang Ling was different. Ever since she was a child, she had felt that Wang Ling was particularly attractive to her. After coming to Wind Thunder Manor and becoming the eldest senior sister, she had once met Wang Ling as a female Taoist priest. For example, the year Wang Ling's grandmother had passed away, it had been Yu Qing who had presided over his grandmother's Dharma conference. At that time, she hadn't been as mature as she was now, and her childish face was still as cute as a porcelain doll's. But when she presided over the Dharma conference, her little face was tense and unusually serious. It was obvious that Yu Yuqing was a female Taoist priest with great professional ability. After entering the Taoist hall, Yu Yuqing led Wang Ling and Lotus Sun to sit down on a prayer mat. This used to be Wind Thunder Manor's lecture hall. Peachwood tables were neatly arranged in front of the hall, and each table had a plain prayer mat in front of it. At the very front of the main hall were an offering table and an incense burner, as well as a huge 8 trigrams disc hanging on the wall. The prayer mat in front of the offering table looked slightly bigger than the prayer mat used by ordinary disciples, and it was also black and white in color. Usually, the Wind Thunder Manor's Manor Lord and Yu Yuqing would preach here. Of course, the Wind Thunder Manor Lord was a lazy person. It was mainly Yu Yuqing who preached in the lecture hall as the eldest senior sister. Compared to the other Taoist temples, the Wind Thunder Manor's specialty was that the people here were all young Taoist priests. After pouring tea for the two of them, Yu Yuqing listened to Lotus Sun's tireless speech. She didn't answer the question right away. Instead, she smiled at Lotus Sun and whispered into her ear, perhaps this is a little rude, but I'm very curious. What kind of relationship do you have with Scholar Wang? Lotus Sun's face immediately burned. We're just classmates. Oh, I see. Yu Yuqing had a look of realization and immediately became happy. From what I remember, Master Wang almost never talks to girls. The probability of them traveling together is very low. Lotus Sun's cheeks beaded with sweat as she probed, so Taoists are also interested in worldly matters. I'm just a Taoist priest, not a monk. Taoists are also divided into those who are particular and those who aren't, and there aren't many restrictions when it comes to relationships. Those who are particular can get married after finding their true love, Yu Yuqing said with a smile. Get married, of course I can get married. I just need to renounce asceticism. I became a Taoist precisely because I was waiting for Wang Ling. When he comes around, I can renounce asceticism at any time. Yu Yuqing spoke bluntly in front of Lotus Sun, and her overflowing confidence instantly gave Lotus Sun a great sense of crisis. On the other side, Wang Ling choked at Yu Yuqing's words. He was sure that Yu Yuqing had said this on purpose. He wasn't saying this for Lotus Sun, but for himself. When he was very young, he remembered that Yu Yuqing liked to tease him more than other girls. In the eyes of others, he was clearly regarded as a silent monster and isolated, but in the end, Yu Yuqing still persisted in making all kinds of jokes with him. The speaker had no intention, but the listener had a heart. These words instantly raised Lotus Sun's vigilance, which she had let down before entering the Taoist temple. As expected, she had been thinking too much. It turned out that female Taoists were the most dangerous. She had pretended to be a Taoist, but it turned out that she was just playing hard to get. Dangerous. Lotus Sun felt that this was a huge crisis. It was completely different from when she had faced Jiang Yingying. She had been sure that Jiang Yingying was no match for her, so she had been very calm all this time. But when it came to Yu Yuqing, she knew nothing, and didn't know what to do. As for the story between Yu Yuqing and Wang Ling, Lotus Sun had no idea at all. She was really very curious as to what on earth had happened between the two of them. While Lotus Sun's imagination was running wild, Yu Yuqing flicked the pink horsetail whisk in her hand and abruptly changed the subject. In Lotus Sun's view, this was a very clever move. She didn't have any chance to ask about her relationship with Wang Ling at all. She looked at the photo for a moment, then nodded and said, "The female Buddhist you mentioned did indeed come to Wind Thunder Manor a while ago to ask me for divination. And because her divination was very strange, I remember it very clearly." Strange divination? Lotus Sun asked. Yes, a very strange divination. Yu Yuqing nodded and said, "Logically speaking, this is a client secret, and I shouldn't have told you. But looking at it now, this female Buddhist might be in danger, so let's handle this special case." She looked at Lotus Sun and Wang Ling with a deadpan expression and said, she wanted me to tell a divination about her job interview. Strange, right? She's clearly a girl about our age, but at such a young age, she abandoned her studies to go to work. At this age, the only way out is to study, and studying is more important than anything else. Rather than finding a place to work. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun suddenly felt that Yu Yuqing wasn't qualified to say this. But Yu Yuqing didn't seem to sense anything wrong with what she had said, and continued, by the way, my divination wasn't very good. So I advised her not to go to work, even if she passed the interview. At that moment, Yu Yuqing sighed. It seems that she thought I was too young, and didn't believe me at all. So she probably went to that unit, and something happened to her. Your divination is so accurate. Lotus Sun was stunned. Of course. Yu Yuqing smiled and took out a palm-sized turtle shell from the storage bag in her Taoist robe. Scholar Wang gave this to me when I was very young. It contains proof of our love, so the divination is definitely accurate. Wang Ling. Chapter 1840. This was a little turtle shell that had been transformed by Wang Ling's version 1.0 enchantment spell. Father and Mother Wang had forced him to give it to Yu Yuqing when she had been the closest to the Wang family back then. Back then, Wang Ling had been very afraid of Yu Yuqing's particular fondness for pestering him, so he had given her the turtle shell for a very simple purpose. He wanted Yu Yuqing to use it to divine her marriage fate, so that she could find a good husband in the future. Wang Ling had to admit that although he had been very young back then, he had indeed thought a little too much. Yu Yuqing obviously hadn't used this turtle shell to divine her marriage fate, but had used it to directly embark on the path of a female Taoist, speaking of which, Wang Ling sighed. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call this fated relationship an ill-fated one. But then again, the gremlins in the Wang family's small villa, such as Lord Ma, had already undergone version 3.0 of the latest enchantment spell. Wang Ling never thought that this version 1.0 enchantment turtle shell would actually be able to divine so accurately. According to Yu Yuqing herself, the turtle shell could predict what would happen in the next 6 months. If the timeline was closer, it would be more detailed, and the further away it was, the fuzzier it would be. So far, the most accurate thing it could do was predict the good or bad luck of an event. Who knew if she was trying to show off her divination ability, but Yu Yuqing began to shake the turtle shell in front of Lotus Sun with a serious expression. After all the copper coins in the turtle shell had been shaken out, Yu Yuqing stared at them carefully and began to speak tirelessly. Today, brothers and sisters who leave a message in this chapter will be lucky. Tomorrow, that shameless author Ku Xian will update once again. He delays every day. I've never seen this before. 4 months from now, around 520, a female celebrity from Sun Island with the surname Xin Yuan will announce her marriage. The internet will suffer the loss of a wife. Yu Yuqing spoke very seriously. In one divination, she had directly said 3 things that would happen today, tomorrow, and even further into the future, which left Lotus Sun gasping in amazement. No wonder when she and Wang Ling had come here, they had seen all kinds of men and women visiting Wind Thunder Manor to worship the 3 pure ones. Most of them came to visit after hearing that Yu Yuqing's divination was accurate. However, Yu Yuqing would usually tell her own fortune before she told someone else's fortune. She would only agree to tell her fortune based on the content of the request. Not everyone's requests would be accepted. There were many old-looking gray-robed Taoists in the Wind Thunder Manor. In fact, these gray-robed Taoists were cultivators who had come from all over the country. They were here to perform a divination for Yu Yuqing and then fulfill her wish. However, the Taoist temple was very small, and there were only 6 places for cultivation. Therefore, those who came to fulfill their wishes needed to make an appointment in advance. Lotus Sun glanced at the appointment list. The longest appointment for those who had come to fulfill their wishes was already 7 months later. It's indeed very popular. Lotus Sun muttered to herself. The more Yu Yuqing spoke, the more she felt a sense of crisis. Because she had never known that before Wang Ling had given her something, he had taken the initiative to give something to another girl. Moreover, Lotus Sun didn't need to think to know that this little turtle shell had been specially enchanted. In other words, Wang Ling probably, had indeed liked Yu Yuqing before. For a moment, her heart was in a whirl. She clearly knew that now wasn't the time to think about these things, but once her emotions got tangled up, she couldn't care less. In the first round, Lotus Sun had to admit that she had lost. She couldn't see through Yu Yuqing. This was the first time she had ever felt this way. Yu Yuqing, on the other hand, was completely unperturbed as she said those easily misunderstood words in a joking manner. Back to business. She flipped through the Daoist Temple's client directory and directly showed Wang Ling and Lotus Sun the records of all the good men and women she had visited. She directly flipped through the directory to a record from more than half a month ago. This is the female scholar you're looking for. The name written on it was Li Xian. Her address is at the back. Our Daoist Temple delivers small pendants to visiting scholars every month. This is actually the master's way of winning over the scholars. At the same time, the pendants also have our Wind Thunder Manor's name on them, which is also a form of advertisement. Lotus Sun tried hard to compose herself as she asked, is she called Li Xian? Is it a fake name? I don't think so. Because before each divination, I always make it clear that you have to use your real name, otherwise the results won't be accurate. So that's how it is. Okay, thank you, Daoist you. Lotus Sun nodded and got up. At that moment, Yu Yuqing grabbed Lotus Sun's arm. Wait, you're leaving just like that? We've already seen the address. We're going to look for her there, said Lotus Sunday. Don't worry, I'll go with you. Yu Yuqing smiled. Lotus Sun was stunned. But, will it be okay without Daoist you in the Daoist temple? It's not a big deal. At worst, I won't do any divination when I'm not around. Besides, the master will be here. If you need anything, you can look for him. Yu Yuqing narrowed her eyes and smiled cutely. Wang Ling, oh, no, Scholar Wang. It's not easy for him to take the initiative to look for me, so I have to help. To be honest, Lotus Sun actually didn't really want to take Yu Yuqing with her. But after all, it was Yu Yuqing who had provided the information on that vlogger. If she refused too obviously, it would make her look bad. Helpless, Lotus Sun could only sigh silently in her heart and agree to Yu Yuqing's request. Before they left the Daoist temple, a young Daoist brought Yu Yuqing a brand new pink horsetail whisk. It was a dark pink horsetail whisk. Apart from the difference in color, there didn't seem to be anything special about it. Seeing Yu Yuqing replace the horsetail whisk, Lotus Sun couldn't help asking curiously, what's the matter? Nothing, it's just that I think this trip might be dangerous. It's not easy for us to go down the mountain. Of course, we have to be prepared. Yu Yuqing smiled. What's the saying? The more you use a weapon, the more ruthless it is. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun, although she wasn't very old, she was already at the peak late foundation establishment stage, and was about to step into the golden core stage. In terms of cultivation aptitude, Lotus Sun felt that Yu Yuqing was very similar to herself, and even more talented. After confirming that Yu Yuqing had joined the team, Lotus Sun directly called a taxi with her phone at the foot of the mountain. Seeing this, Yu Yuqing was startled. Call a taxi here. Do you know how expensive it is to take a taxi there? Lotus Sun smiled awkwardly. Then, should we go on a sword? Flying a sword isn't challenging at all. Since we have to cultivate at the same time, the first choice is naturally a bicycle. Our Daoist temple has a one-car garage at the foot of the mountain. The three of us can ride there. Yu Yuqing smiled kindly. Lotus Sun had no choice but to agree. As for Wang Ling sandwiched between the two women, he really didn't know what to do. But the moment they saw the bicycle, Wang Ling and Lotus Sun regretted not turning down Yu Yuqing's request earlier. Because this was a long bicycle that could seat 3 people. Chapter 1841. Looking at this ivory 3-person bicycle in front of them, Wang Ling and Lotus Sun fell into deep thought at the same time. It was really hard for Wang Ling to imagine what it would be like to ride this bicycle through the streets. Would he really not be taken for a lunatic? Furthermore, if he was sandwiched between 2 girls, what kind of expression would passers-by look at him? He clearly wasn't the Sea King. Would he be taken for one? If some nosy person took a photo and posted it online, wouldn't he be instantly killed? After all, some news media nowadays couldn't even directly publish news about important academicians without verifying it first, which was really unprofessional behavior. It seriously lowered the credibility of the domestic media. The most important thing was that after publishing it, if they found out that there was something wrong with the report, they would directly delete it and pretend that nothing had happened, without apologizing. This was simply too shameless. A great man had once said that the current news industry still had to learn more. After all, they were too young and needed to improve their knowledge, otherwise they would have to take responsibility if there were any deviations in their reports in the future. Don't spend all day thinking about making big news. Wang Ling felt that this lecture wasn't wrong at all. So, being a little cautious was always the right thing to do. Don't be fooled by how ordinary this bicycle looks, it's actually very agile. I've given it the nickname Little White Dragon. Yu Yuqing smiled. Of course, I know you might not be used to it, so I prepared a helmet for you in advance. As she said this, she took out the motorcycle helmet in an exceptionally considerate manner. Yu Yuqing was well aware of Wang Ling's sociopathic personality. He definitely wouldn't be used to riding this bicycle around so openly. As long as there was a suitable cover, a motorcycle helmet was a very good choice, and it could also ensure safety. After all, when the bicycle in the cultivation world was in operation, how fast it could be ridden depended on the realm of the rider. Yu Yuqing estimated their strength. They were all at the peak late foundation establishment stage, and with the 3 of them riding together, Little White Dragon could directly exceed 600 km per hour. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun both sweated. Of course, they also knew about the invisible rule of riding a bicycle based on one's realm, so it was hard for them to imagine what it would be like for Wang Ling to ride a bicycle. Surpassing the speed of light was just a basic operation. How many times faster was the problem? Wang Ling took the motorcycle helmet and couldn't help sighing in his heart. They hadn't seen each other in years, but Yu Yuqing's way of thinking was still as novel as ever. Luckily, he was wearing a motorcycle helmet, so he didn't feel so embarrassed. Before he got on the car, he shook his finger and used the lowest level enchantment spell on the Little White Dragon so that it wouldn't directly disintegrate while it was moving at high speed. Then he put on his helmet and headed straight for the front of the bike. Just in case, he intended to take control of the bike himself. But Yu Yuqing saw through him and stopped him. Wait, Wang Ling. Do you know the way? Why don't I do it? Wang Ling, of course he knew the way. If Yu Yuqing hadn't insisted on following them, he might have found a remote corner and teleported there with Lotus Sunday. Seeing that Yu Yuqing was putting him in a difficult position, Lotus Sun immediately stepped forward to smooth things over. How about I do it? I've been there before, and I know the way. Are you sure? Yu Yuqing asked again. I'll sit at the front. Lotus Sun nodded. Then Wang Ling will sit second, and I'll sit at the back. They finished their discussion calmly. Just as Lotus Sun was about to sit at the front of the bike, she suddenly realized a very serious problem. Lotus Sun suddenly realized that she had fallen into Yu Yueching's trap. First of all, Wang Ling, who was sitting second, definitely wouldn't hold her waist, then Yu Yueching, who was sitting third. It was very likely that she would directly hold Wang Ling's waist. And then, she would call him, in an extremely intimate manner. That intense image almost instantly filled Lotus Sun's mind. Good heavens, it turned out that Daoist Yu had been waiting for her here. No. She absolutely couldn't let Yu Yueching have her way. So before she got on the car, she changed her mind again. Daoist Yu, there's a part of the road that I don't remember very clearly. How about you sit second? It'll be easier for you to show me the way. Sure, no problem. To Lotus Sun's surprise, Yu Yueching actually agreed happily without the slightest hint of regret on her face. In that instant, Lotus Sun's heart was moved. She felt that maybe she was simply overthinking things, and shouldn't have been so petty, but sometimes, she still felt that being a little more cautious was always the right thing to do. Just like that, a Daoist priest and 2 foundation establishment high school students from a cultivation high school officially rode Little White Dragon on their way to find the vlogger called Li Xian. On the road, Wang Ling could feel a strong sense of shame through his motorcycle helmet. It was as if the gazes of the people around him could penetrate the helmet and land on him, making his forehead sweat profusely. He could only bury his head in pedaling to complete his mission. After many twists and turns, they finally arrived at the address they had registered at the Taoist temple at about 7:30 in the evening. It was an apartment. When the 3 of them reached the ground floor, the apartment manager immediately opened the door with a vigilant look in his eyes. Who are you looking for? We're looking for a resident called Li Xian. Can you let us in? Lotus Sun asked. You don't live in this apartment, do you? I've never seen you before. Unless she comes down to pick you up, I can't let you in, the apartment manager said strictly. And recently, some lawbreakers like to dress up as pitiful student groups and sneak into the apartment to steal things. Of course, I'm not suspecting you. It's just that people have been in a state of panic recently, and it's our duty. Understood. Lotus Sun nodded. At that moment, the apartment manager said, By the way, if you can find the landlord of this apartment and he gives you permission, I can let you in. I'm just a worker, I really can't take responsibility if something happens. The landlord? Are all the residents in this apartment tenants? Yu Yueching asked. Yes. The apartment manager nodded. This is a group apartment for white-collar workers, and especially rented out to migrant workers. There's only one landlord. This entire building belongs to him. That's easy. Hearing this, Lotus Sun was instantly happy. When she took out her phone, Wang Ling already knew what she wanted to do. Lotus Sun dialed Old Master Sun's number and said, Yes, Grandpa. Have you heard of an apartment called Conch Apartments? It's on Beihai Road. Yes, I've taken a fancy to this building. Can Grandpa buy it? It'll be done in 10 minutes, right? Okay, I'll wait for Grandpa's news. Wang Ling, Yu Yueching and the apartment manager were all dumbfounded. From their point of view, what Lotus Sun had just bought wasn't an apartment, but a walnut. Chapter 1842. Although the real estate purchase process wasn't as fast as expected, after Old Man Sun gave the landlord an irresistible price, the landlord very quickly contacted the duty room to let the future owner go. The manager stared at Lotus Sun in utter astonishment. Was this what it meant to speculate on abilities? It was almost 8:00 at night, and Wang Ling was calm. He had finished all his homework at school today, so he could carry out his tasks without any worries. Handing in homework on time was also a manifestation of commitment and responsibility, and Father Wang was a very responsible person in this regard. Like many people who had already graduated and started working, he would occasionally dream of being criticized by his teacher for not finishing his homework. In the end, when he woke up with a start, he realized that he had already graduated and started working for several years. Holding the master key given to them by the duty room, the three of them took the elevator to that video blogger Li Xian's apartment. When they reached the door, Lotus Sun knocked politely. "Excuse me, is anyone home?" As she asked, she released her spiritual senses to check the apartment. After confirming that there was no one in the apartment, she opened the door with the master key. Wang Ling felt that this scene was a little familiar. In his memory, for example, Xiang Yi, the new guest official of Battle Sect, was an expert in this area. Back then, this guy had honed his skill at picking locks in an uninhabited wasteland, and had forcefully pried out the wealth of an empire. Wait! Just as Lotus Sun was about to push open the door and enter, Yu Yuqing called out to them. She took out a miniature camera from her storage bag and hung it on the lapel of her Taoist robe. Wang Ling frowned. Somehow, he felt that this miniature camera looked a little familiar. What's this? A miniature camera. It's the same thing as a law enforcement recorder. Although you're the landlord now, if something happens in the apartment, it'll be hard to explain. So it's very important to prepare in advance. Saying this, she cupped her red face as if she was showing off and said to Lotus Sun, "To tell you the truth, this is Wang Ling's second birthday present for me." Speaking up to this point, Wang Ling instantly recalled the origin of this camera. In theory, this wasn't a gift from Wang Ling, but a token of Father and Mother Wang's goodwill. After all, Father and Mother Wang would arrange birthday gifts for Yu Yuqing every year during the best years of the Wang family's relationship with Yu Yuqing. Even if Wang Ling didn't arrange it, Father and Mother Wang would do it for him, and then have Wang Ling enchant them or add a blessing buff to them before giving them to them. Then, Wang Ling would be the one giving the gift. So don't underestimate this tiny camera. After being enlightened by Wang Ling, it could actually record things that other people couldn't see. All these years, Yu Yuqing had taken good care of the camera, and it was as good as new. She naturally noticed the magic of the miniature camera in her hand, and marveled at the power of modern cultivation technology. After all, there really weren't many cameras on the market that could directly capture ghosts and use the lens to directly transcend. Thus, Yu Yuqing had always been very moved. She knew that this miniature camera had to be very valuable, but she never expected Wang Ling to actually give it to her as a birthday present. Seeing Yu Yuqing showing off, Lotus Sun also felt a little helpless. It would be unrealistic to say that it wasn't sour. Her mouth was filled with bitterness. At the same time, she was a little envious of the childhood friendship between Yu Yuqing and Wang Ling. She had never experienced these things before. But in front of Yu Yuqing and Wang Ling, she couldn't appear too restless, otherwise she would definitely be treated as a joke. But it was still so annoying, she roared in her heart. Just like the groundhog standing in the mountains. Come on, let's go in. Once everything was ready, Yu Yuqing flicked her horsetail whisk with a smile and gestured for Lotus Sun to push the door open. Taking a deep breath, Lotus Sun straightaway turned the doorknob, and then accurately found the light switch to turn on the room. The apartment wasn't too big, being less than 40 square meters, but it had all the essentials: a kitchen, a bathroom, and a balcony. Conch apartments were apartments for young people, and were built in an entrepreneurial zone. They also received an annual subsidy from the higher-ups, so the rent wasn't particularly high. Li Xian was only 16, the age of a student. Furthermore, she had only recently started thinking about going out to work, so where did she get the rent from? It was impossible to ask the previous landlord about this. There was too much information on the tenants. If they asked the previous landlord directly which one was Li Xian, the previous landlord would probably be dumbfounded. Wang Ling looked around the apartment. It was clean, tidy, and could even be said to be spotless. Even if it was a girl's place, it was still a little too unworldly. Lotus Sun and Yu Yuqing looked around, but didn't find any valuable clues. However, it was precisely this extremely clean room that made the two women suspicious. I think it's strange, Lotus Sun said. As a girl's room, there doesn't seem to be anything special in the wardrobe except for some girls' clothes. Everything is very clean, so clean that it looks like someone has cleaned it on purpose. Yuiching agreed with Lotus Sunday. I agree with Miss Sun, there's definitely something wrong here. As she said this, she started to play with the video camera. From the moment they had entered the room, the video camera had been clean, and hadn't captured anything strange. Yuiching frowned. Her sixth sense told her that there was definitely something wrong with this room, and it was very big. Wang Ling, what do you think? She asked curiously. When she turned her head, she saw Wang Ling looking at a white wall. She hurriedly used the video camera to take pictures of this white wall, but still didn't find anything. Is there something wrong with this wall? Yuiching asked. Wang Ling didn't answer immediately. He had indeed noticed something, and was hesitating about whether or not he should do something about this problematic white wall. But at the same time, he felt that it was a little too early to do anything, and could easily alert the enemy and expose a lot of problems. Thus, after some hesitation, Wang Ling withdrew his hand. The fact that Yuiching hadn't captured anything unusual seemed pretty normal to Wang Ling. After all, this birthday gift was almost 10 years old, and it had been done using version 1.0 of the enchantment spell, and he had done it in a perfunctory manner back then. Although the enchantment spell was more powerful than a regular video camera, it wouldn't be able to solve a serious problem. Take the current situation for example. The white wall they were facing. Wang Ling was the only one who could see the cryptic runes on the wall. Wang Ling was certain. These were the marks left behind by the ancient ones. Chapter 1843. It was already late at night. When Wang Ling faced this wall full of cryptic runes that ordinary people couldn't see through, he immediately knew that this was no longer something that Lotus Sun or Yuiching could get involved in. If he continued to investigate with them, they would definitely run into danger. Even if he had already strengthened Lotus Sun to this level, these hidden ancient ones were cunning and full of tricks. Lotus Sun's lack of skill and experience would put her at a disadvantage, and combat strength couldn't make up for experience. As for Yuiching, there was no need to say much. Although Wang Ling had given her a lot of enchanted birthday presents when she was young, it still wouldn't be enough to deal with the ancient ones. Thus, after staring blankly at the wall for a moment, Wang Ling shook his head and walked out of the apartment with his hands in the pockets of his school uniform as if nothing had happened. He deliberately didn't tell them what he had seen, and kept it all to himself without saying a word. As for Lotus Sun and Yuiching, they looked at each other before following Wang Ling out. Out of their understanding of Wang Ling, they each had their own plans. It was getting late, so the three of them decided to go home. Before leaving, Yuiching added Wang Ling on WeChat, and then added Lotus Sun as well. Lotus Sun didn't refuse, she actually wanted to know more about Yuiching, so she generously took out her phone and scanned the QR code. After obtaining their contact information, Yuiching smiled brightly. I feel that Lotus Sun and I are actually very compatible. I can read your fortune for free later, and you can ask me anything you want. Lotus Sun replied with a natural and unrestrained smile. Alright, then I won't stand on ceremony. Thank you, Daoist you. Just call me Little Qing. No need to be so formal. If there's anything else you need my help with, just contact me on WeChat. Yuiching narrowed her eyes slightly, then flicked her horsetail whisk and rode away on her ivory little white dragon. Wang Ling, did you see something? After watching Yuiching leave, Lotus Sun couldn't help asking Wang Ling if he had seen anything in the room just now. She had asked this question after understanding Wang Ling. Although Wang Ling had expressionlessly said that there was nothing out of the ordinary in the apartment earlier, she could more or less sense that something wasn't right. Moreover, she believed that Yuiching felt the same way. It was just that Yuiching retreated in order to advance. Lotus Sun felt that she was increasingly unable to see through Yuqing. But after asking this question, Wang Ling stared fixedly at her for a while, and finally shook his head. He waved goodbye to Lotus Sun, indicating that she should go back early. After waiting in the dark for a while to confirm that Lotus Sun had left the apartment, he reappeared at a hidden corner of the street and returned to the room he had just been in to face that strange white wall again. He activated his king's eye and dispersed the pure white mist on the white wall, revealing the mystical runes hidden behind it. After doing all this, he sat cross-legged on the ground and used his eye power to summon the 3 primordial ones who had been sealed in the Eye universe. They were the Skeleton Prince of the Undead, the Lion Man of the Primordial Lion Clan, and Meng Lioli, the Princess of the Dream Clan. Wang Ling had wanted to ask Monk Golden Lamp, Li Xian and Zhang Zipei to come as well, but that would have alerted the enemy. The 3 of them were now important elders of Battle's sect, and almost everyone in the sect would know that they were out on business. It would be bad if word got out. So Wang Ling summoned the 3 primordial ones who had been in the King's Eye earlier, intending to listen to their opinions. Ever since Wang Ling had beaten them into submission in Glio City, the 3 primordial ones had completely lost their temper. Furthermore, they knew that the Holy Race had successfully compromised with Wang Ling, and had transferred all their contracts to him. What was even more unbelievable was that Wang Ling didn't care about the restrictions of these contracts at all. After obtaining them, he had burned them to ashes with the eternal fire of the King's Eye. This meant that he wasn't worried at all that they would run away. On the other hand, he was fully confident in his own strength. Now, the Skeleton Prince, the Lion Man and Meng Lioli were looking forward to Wang Ling fulfilling his promise of Utopia of the Primordial Ones. Without any contract binding them, they finally found freedom and the feeling of being respected. As for Wang Ling, who had already become their new boss, they were willing to stay by his side even if they didn't sign any labor contracts. Until Wang Ling had summoned them, the somewhat cultured Skeleton Prince had still been drafting an essay entitled Wang Ling, My Superman. But now, when they saw the cryptic runes on the white wall in front of them, they looked at each other in dismay, and their expressions turned extremely solemn. I remember seeing these mysterious runes in a battle with a certain clan. The Skeleton Prince immediately frowned as he recalled something from a long time ago, but it had been so long ago that it had to be traced back to when he was very young. The undead had an infinitely long lifespan to begin with, to be able to trace it back to when he was young was even more terrifying. Because when he was young, the rulers of the old days had still existed, but they were already at the end of the old days, and were far from as glorious as they had been in their heyday. There are a few suspicious eternal-level forces who are good at using this mysterious rune to write formulas and create arrays and secret techniques, the Lion Man replied, scratching his head. It's been a long time, but I should be able to confirm it with some time. At that moment, Meng Lioli continued, I just need to search through the dreams. This is a unique ability of the Dream Clan. They have a record of all the dreams they have invaded before, and can compile it into a huge dream network that can be shared in the spiritual space. As long as I confirm the approximate time frame, I'll be able to do a precise search, and I'll have results soon. Saying this, she sat down cross-legged and started to work without another word. Wang Ling was very satisfied with her efficiency. Elsewhere, when Lotus Sun arrived home, the head maid surnamed Xiao immediately came to greet her. Miss, you're finally back. You have a friend waiting for you in the living room. Friend? Lotus Sun stared blankly for a moment, then followed the head maid with a doubtful expression. When she reached the living room, a familiar snow-white figure appeared in front of her. It was none other than Yuqing. We meet again, classmate Lotus Sunday. Yuqing didn't stand on ceremony, and immediately stood up from the sofa to look at her with a smile, as if she were the host and guest. Lotus Sun took a deep breath. She had never expected Yuqing to retreat at the entrance of the apartment in order to advance, and actually retreat directly to her house. What kind of show was this? It's already very late. Is something the matter, Daoist Yu? Lotus Sun asked, trying hard to maintain her composure. I just have a few questions that I'm a little curious about. Yu Yuqing rubbed her chin and carefully looked Lotus Sun up and down. She then slowly walked over, and as she got closer, she couldn't help smiling as she looked at Lotus Sunday. I actually want to ask, do you like Wang Ling? Chapter 1844. Lotus Sun was completely taken aback by Yu Yuqing's straightforwardness, and her flushed face clearly showed her utter astonishment. She had never expected Yu Yuqing to come directly to her house at night and even ask her such a blunt question. So, was this a provocation? Lotus Sun shook her head inwardly, but didn't think so. When Yu Yuqing had said this, she hadn't sensed the slightest bit of murderous intent. On the contrary, she had felt a sense of déjà vu, as if she had been teased. Lotus Sun was all too familiar with this feeling. It was just like how Audiobook liked to tease her and call her mistress. Now that the question had been thrown at her, Lotus Sun felt that if she didn't give an answer, it would be too petty of her, and it would seem that she cared a lot. It was just Wang Ling, a mere blockhead. What was there about him that she cared so much about? After doing her best to restrain her emotions, Lotus Sun took a deep breath, looked at Yu Yuqing, and summoned up her courage to reply, Daoist Yu is right, you're absolutely right. I like Wang Ling. Sure enough, I've calculated it correctly again. Also, let me tell you a little secret. Yu Yuqing narrowed her eyes and smiled, then grabbed Lotus Sun's hand. I like him too. Lotus Sun, Yu Yuqing smiled. What's so strange about that? It's normal for cute boys to be liked by a lot of people. In any case, we haven't officially established a relationship, right? So it can only be considered a fair competition now. Lotus Sun's heart hurt a little when she heard this. She smacked her lips and felt a bitter taste in her mouth, but she couldn't find any reason to refute it. There was no such thing as first come, first served when liking someone, and no one said that Wang Ling had to be hers. It could only be said that Yu Yuqing was a very difficult opponent, and this was the first time Lotus Sun had felt this way. This Daoist priest was far from being as naive as Jiang Yingying, who would be easily dismissed. Lotus Sun felt that she was in for a tough fight. Did Daoist priest come to see me tonight just to ask this? If there's anything else, do you want to sit down and talk? Contrary to Yu Yuqing's expectations, Lotus Sun was much more composed than she had expected. Not only did she not have any intention of driving her away, she even took the initiative to let her stay. Then, Lotus Sun clapped her hands and had the head maid serve tea and snacks. A sweet smell immediately wafted out, and the light purple tea sparkled with starlight, as if the Milky Way was reflected on the surface of the lake at night. Yu Yuqing took a sip and smacked her lips. She didn't wait for Lotus Sun's introduction before exclaiming in pleasant surprise, "It's made of top-grade moonlight grass, right?" Lotus Sun was astonished. She hadn't expected Yu Yuqing to be so knowledgeable about the tea ceremony, and to be able to identify the type with just one sip. The spirit tea brewed from top-grade moonlight grass had the effect of calming the mind and nourishing the mind. It was extremely suitable for consumption at night, and it also had the ability to improve one's memory. While drinking tea, one would be able to memorize the knowledge in one's mind. This effect could last for several months. It was exam season soon, and Lotus Sun always prepared more at home. But moonlight grass was expensive, and because of the harsh conditions under which it grew, there was a limited amount of it that could be farmed. This top-grade moonlight grass, on the other hand, grew in the natural environment, and there were strict harvesting standards every year, so it was even rarer. 1 gram of tea grass could be sold for immortal gold. Leisurely sipping her tea, Yu Yuqing was in a very good mood. Looking at Lotus Sun's seemingly unruffled face, she found it a little funny. After a few minutes, Yu Yuqing got down to business. It seems that classmate Lotus Sun still doesn't treat me as a friend. I clearly told you to call me Little Qing, but you still call me Daoist Yu. Lotus Sun, no, Little Qing, you're thinking too much. You don't have to force yourself to call me that. I understand very well that we're competitors, after all, and there's nothing wrong with being respectful. Yu Yuqing put down the teacup in her hand and said elegantly and naturally, then I want to hear what you think of Wang Ling. For example, what can you detect from him when he's in the apartment? These words put Lotus Sun on guard. Yu Yuqing didn't know Wang Ling's true strength, but she was asking this question, did she already sense something from him? She was very puzzled. After a moment of silence, Lotus Sun said, there's clearly something wrong with that apartment, but Wang Ling says there's nothing wrong with it. Yes. Yu Yuqing nodded heavily and said, it's clear that he doesn't want us to take part in the investigation, and he's already found some clues about the apartment. But Wang Ling's strength is the same as ours, so why is he so confident to take part in the investigation alone? Lotus Sun's throat involuntarily rolled at this question, and for the first time, she sensed a sharp aura emanating from Yu Yuqing. She even suspected that it was very likely that Yu Yuqing knew something. Lotus Sun was hesitating about how to tell Yu Yuqing this. Unexpectedly, Yu Yuqing smiled slightly at that moment. I know what you want to say, classmate Lotus Sunday. Or perhaps you've already sensed it, right? Sensed what? That is, Wang Ling isn't an ordinary person. After Yu Yuqing said this, Lotus Sun's eyebrows instantly furrowed slightly. Yu Yuqing immediately noticed this subtle change in expression, and after seeing Lotus Sun's expression, she was even more certain of her guess. Sure enough, you've also sensed it. Wang Ling has always been low-key and has hidden himself very well. But if you get closer to him, sooner or later you'll also notice that there's something unusual about him. I don't know what Daoist Yu is talking about. Lotus Sun was stupefied by Yu Yuqing's words. Don't worry, classmate Lotus Sunday. I didn't intend to tell anyone about Wang Ling, and seeing you like this, I'm a lot more at ease. You've probably been helping him hide it all along, right? Even covering for him. Yu Yuqing laughed. I'm not stupid. The birthday presents Wang Ling gave me all had strange abilities. From this alone, I can tell that he's not an ordinary person. You're probably like me, right? Did you observe the situation from the details? That's right. Lotus Sun said awkwardly. Her emotions were intertwined and extremely complicated. She had never thought that Yu Yuqing would actually be able to sense Wang Ling's hidden strength from the details, and she was completely different from Yu Yuqing. At this thought, Lotus Sun's face couldn't help turning slightly red. Because of Wang Ling's secret. In some sense, it was Wang Ling himself who had told her. Chapter 1845. In the face of Yu Yuqing's menacing aura, this was the first time Lotus Sun had the misconception that she wouldn't be able to hold her own. She had never thought that someone would actually be able to guess that Wang Ling was out of the ordinary based on her intuition alone. This woman was very dangerous, more dangerous than any of the people Lotus Sun had dealt with before. She looked simple, but was far less so than Jiang Yingying, and even more shrewd than Ryoko Kwamiya. Furthermore, she gave off a foggy feeling that no matter how hard you concentrated, you couldn't see through her. While Lotus Sun was in a daze, Yu Yuqing put on a calm and unhurried expression again and said, so now, this is the secret that classmate Lotus Sun and I share. I don't want to cause trouble for Wang Ling, so I've kept it a secret. She didn't ask Lotus Sun how she had sensed Wang Ling's true strength, and instead chose to skip this part. The main thing was that Yu Yuqing felt that she and Lotus Sun hadn't known each other for very long, and it was already a little rude to drop by without any notice tonight. Thus, she didn't want to appear nosy and ask endless questions like a curious baby. Furthermore, even if she did ask, she felt that Lotus Sun wouldn't answer her so honestly, and would most likely find an excuse that didn't fit the facts. After all, she and Lotus Sun weren't that familiar yet. Furthermore, it was very clear that Lotus Sun was wary of her. So given the current situation, it wasn't time for her to be completely honest. For Yu Yuqing, helping to investigate that video blogger Li Xian wasn't the key was to use this opportunity to get closer to Wang Ling and Lotus Sunday. When that time came, it would be time for her to speak up. What do you think about that video blogger? Yu Yuqing asked again at that moment. It's clear that Wang Ling doesn't want us to get involved. This means that there might be something very dangerous behind this, Lotus Sun said. If we force our way in, I'm afraid we'll cause trouble for Wang Ling. So, it's better not to do anything. That's true. Yu Yuqing nodded and said, but I think we can still do some logistics work, right? For example, I recently discovered a mysterious organization that seems to have something to do with Wang Ling. I think it'll be very dangerous in the long run. It's not good for Wang Ling to hide his strength. What organization? I think it's called Grey Sect. In that video blogger Li Xian's apartment, the meeting between Wang Ling and the three Eternal Emperors was still going on. Meng Liuli's eyes glowed with the color of an aurora. She was trying her best to read through the records of the dream invasion. Found it. About 10 minutes later, she took out a wordless jade tube from her sleeve and projected everything she saw in the spiritual space onto the jade tube. Which race's language is it? The skeleton prince asked. Currently, I'm not sure which clan it belongs to, but the mysterious text that I'm projecting into the jade tube is from the library of the East Great Emperor's palace, Meng Liuli said. Eastern Great Emperor. Wang Ling raised his eyebrows. He had never heard of this name before, but he felt that this person was not simple. The Lion Man then explained, in ancient times, all the races were at loggerheads with one another. In order to survive, some of the weaker clans would form alliances. At their peak, they were divided into 4 camps, and the East Great Emperor was one of them. Then what about Dao Ancestor Wang? At that moment, Wang Ying's voice came from Wang Ling's body. Dao Ancestor Wang appears and disappears unpredictably, and has no interest in participating in the disputes of these ancient clans. He has no interest in leading the ancient ones, and only appears to mediate when there are irreconcilable conflicts between the clans. The Skeleton Prince said, this is the Dao Ancestor's view of the big picture, even those self-proclaimed great emperors can't compare. Of course, to be able to become great emperors back then, there's no need to doubt their strength. We once relied on these 4 great emperors and wanted to run for the throne, but it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. So now it seems that this mysterious text was most likely written by one of the 4 great emperors. Wang Ying asked in place of Wang Ling, not necessarily. Meng Liuli shook her head and said, members of my clan once invaded the dream of the pavilion master of the East Great Emperor's imperial palace, and it was through his dream that we found this mysterious text. The information in the imperial palace's sutra depository is very complicated, so the mysterious text might not have been written by the East Great Emperor. However, it's very clear that the East Great Emperor has already deciphered the text and used it to write a diary. Write a diary. At the scene, Wang Ling, Wang Ying, the Skeleton Prince and the Lion Man all looked puzzled at the same time. The first half of the Jade Tube is a record of all kinds of mysterious text in the Sutra Depository, while the second half was written by the East Great Emperor. The timeline of the contents is later than the first half, so I suspect that the East Great Emperor wrote it after deciphering the mysterious text, Meng Liuli said. An emperor writing a diary in the mysterious text that he had just learned, what kind of operation was this? So the emperor also writes a diary. The Lion Man couldn't help teasing at this thought. That's right, which decent person would write a diary? The Skeleton Prince also nodded. Speaking up to this point, the Skeleton Prince paused and asked, Lion, do you write a diary? The Lion Man, I don't. What about you, skeleton? The skeleton prince, who would write the truth in a diary? Can what is written in a diary be the truth? The two of them burst into laughter at this point and shouted, "Despicable," in unison. But Wang Ling now had a completely different view of the East Great Emperor writing a diary in the mysterious text. This clever East Great Emperor had deciphered the mysterious text and even used it to write a diary, so he had to be very confident in the secrecy of the text, to the extent that he didn't believe that anyone could decipher it. Therefore, using the reverse logic to consider, the things that the Great East Emperor wrote in his diary might really be true words. It might even involve a series of ancient secrets. Wang Ling had thought that Meng Liuli would be able to quickly find out who on earth was using this mysterious text in the myriad ancient tribe. In the end, Meng Liuli had unexpectedly directly found this East Great Emperor's diary. So now, it seemed that there was only one way for Wang Ling to crack it, that was to use his power of sight to forcibly decipher the mysterious text, and then translate it into a language that was closest to modern writing. But these mysterious texts were extremely obscure, and Wang Ling was worried that in the process of deciphering it, his eye might suffer unprecedented pressure. If his king's eye was damaged, that would be bad. So as a precaution, Wang Ling had already thought of a way to prevent this from happening. Thinking this, he pressed his palm against the ground and immediately summoned a glass display case. And what was sealed inside were all kinds of pupils. At this point, the skeleton prince, Meng Liuli, the lion man and Wang Ying were all stupefied. Wang Ling took off his king's eye with practiced ease and stored it in the glass case like he was replacing contact lenses. Then, he took out a new pair of pupils and put them back in his eye sockets. Chapter 1846. There were a total of 49 pairs of eyes in the display case, which were the variables of Tao. Each eye was born of Tao and had completely different abilities, and could be perfectly used in different situations. In the end, Wang Ling was still cautious. He didn't want the king's eye to be damaged while deciphering the mysterious text, so he had decided to change the eyes before deciphering them. All the eyes in the display case had their own serial numbers, and the king's eye was number 49. And now, he had directly chosen eye 01. Tao 01 eye, deceitful peeping magic eye. Its appearance is orange and green, and its pupils are in the shape of stars. It has the ability to distinguish all deceitful people and deceitful objects. It can also use the power of deceit for its own use to deceive a certain target. Wang Ling knew all the descriptions of the king's eyes. The reason why he had chosen eye 01 was entirely because it was a very powerful illusion spell and was very deceptive. Who knew, he might be able to directly decipher the mysterious text when it wasn't paying attention. After installing it, Wang Ling didn't think too much about it, and directly stared at the mysterious text on the jade tube. After staring at it for 5 or 6 minutes, he abruptly closed the jade tube. Then, with a bang, the orange-green liquid of the eye splattered everywhere, and eye 01 actually exploded on the spot like a cow's eye on a barbecue stand. This, the skeleton prince, the lion man and Meng Liuli looked horrified at the same time. They had never expected to see such a frightening scene. But it seemed that Wang Ling had already predicted this situation, and was exceptionally calm. He used the primer spell to gather up the exploded liquid of the eye, then took off eye 01 and put it back in the display case. The king's eye display case had the effect of repairing the eyes, but the damage to eye 01 was too severe, and it would probably take several years for it to return to its peak condition. Wang Ling sighed in his heart. Sure enough, he had been right to be cautious. If he directly used the king's eye and it got damaged, it would mean that his combat strength would be reduced in some sense, and would instead give evildoers an opportunity to deal with him. The king's eye was eye 49. Although it could be repaired in the king's eye display case after it was damaged, who knew how long it would take for it to recover? The later the number of eyes, the longer it would take to repair them. In fact, Wang Ling's choice of eyes to decipher the diary of East Great Emperor was also a test of his own strength. He could see that there was something strange about the diary of the Eastern Great Emperor. Since this was an emperor-level character that had once led an ancient race, his strength was definitely not ordinary. Moreover, his strength was several levels higher than these ancient imperial races' ancient race. The fact that the other party was familiar with the mysterious language and had even written a diary in the mysterious language showed that he was extremely confident in his own strength. This meant that he wasn't afraid that others would see the diary, and even if they did, they wouldn't be able to decipher it. In the worst-case scenario, even if it was really deciphered, it was normal for a great emperor to set some magic traps inside. For example, when Wang Ling had just used Dao 01 to test the waters, he had suffered a backlash from the magic trap. Generally speaking, this could only mean that the eye he was using didn't have the ability to directly decipher the diary and resist the magic traps hidden in it. Thus, the second time around, Wang Ling directly chose Dao 016 to directly upgrade the level of the eye. Dao 016 Eye, Resplendent Dark Forest Holy Eye. It is black and white on the outside and pure white in the center. It has the ability to probe and attack an unknown civilization. When an unknown civilization tries to damage the Holy Eye will display its greatest power and counterattack. After silently reciting the details of Dao 016 Eye, Wang Ling thought that after the King's Eye, this should be the eye most suitable for deciphering the mysterious language. After all, to the vast majority of cultivators, the mysterious language belonged to an unknown civilization. Now that East Great Emperor had written the mysterious language and set up a trap inside, as long as the Holy Eye was damaged, the defense mechanism would be directly triggered and the mysterious language would be instantly swallowed up and its hidden meaning would be analyzed. Following the previous steps, Wang Ling continued to stare at the jade tube. This time, the mysterious language in the diary of East Great Emperor didn't harm Dao 016 Eye. Furthermore, Wang Ling could clearly sense that the mysterious characters on the jade tubes floated out of them like feathers. Then, it drifted all over the sky. Looks like it worked. Meng Lioli was pleasantly surprised and curious. She was also very interested in the contents of the diary of East Great Emperor, and wondered what was written inside. But at that moment, it was as if Wang Ling was completely immersed in the world of the diary of East Great Emperor, and didn't respond to the calls of the outside world. The crimson crescent moon hung high in the sky, shining on the silent city in the alien land. Iron fortresses built from black iron rose from the ground one after another, like small mountains. Wang Ling had never expected that after Dao 016 I analyzed the mysterious language in the diary of East Great Emperor, it would actually be able to bring about such an immersive experience. That was right. At that moment, Wang Ling had transformed into the appearance of East Great Emperor from ancient times, and had begun to play the role of East Great Emperor in this diary. At the same time, this was also Wang Ling's first time seeing the style of the ancient cultivation world. He had thought that the ancient cultivation world should have been the most unsophisticated civilization, full of all kinds of prehistoric beasts, undeveloped areas, terrifying secret lands, and primitive tribes where hundreds of schools of thought contended. It was only at that moment that Wang Ling realized that the ancient cultivators had already built buildings that resembled modern civilization on this alien land. This was a world where ancient and modern intertwined, with traces of modern architecture, while retaining the grandeur of ancient architecture. So, from ancient times to the present, it wasn't an evolution, but a continuation. Or was it a reincarnation? Wang Ling was lost in thought. East Great Emperor's imperial palace still retained its majestic imperial style. Wang Ling stood at the top of the city, the flames of the beacons behind him making half his face look red in the dark of the night. His dark golden robes were embroidered with the image of a vermilion bird, and his wide and long sleeves billowed in the strong wind. His sword-like eyebrows were raised, and East Great Emperor stood on the great wall with his hands behind his back, exuding the aura of a king that could intimidate the world. His pupils were deep, but different from the black jade of the past. At that moment, Yeast Great Emperor's pupils had already transformed into the appearance of Dao 016I, which indicated that Wang Ling was using an eye technique to temporarily experience the life recorded by Yeast Great Emperor in this diary. Emperor. At that moment, a young man with skin as fair as jade and long flowing hair flew over on a sword from afar and landed directly next to Wang Ling. All the character information and the following script instantly appeared in Wang Ling's mind. This young man was Yeast Great Emperor's Imperial Palace's white-robed chief steward and military commander, Yi Ren. Wang Ling didn't need to speak at all, and his body automatically responded to Yi Ren according to the script in the diary. What's the matter? West Great Emperor's envoy is here. Emperor, do you want to meet him? He said that if you want a truce, you must agree to all their demands. Yi Ren said at that moment, bowing with his hands folded in front. Chapter 1847. Lotus Sun and Yu Yuqing discussed how to better cover for Wang Ling for over an hour. Friendship between girls was sometimes wonderful. With a common goal in mind, the two of them felt that they were much closer to each other. Lotus Sun also felt that Yu Yuqing wasn't as dangerous as before. But she still hadn't completely let down her guard. Later on, Yu Yuqing even started to use the camera to play a video of the two of them celebrating their birthdays together, which made Lotus Sun extremely envious. It wasn't like she hadn't seen Wang Ling as a child at home before, but little Wang Ling could move in the video. This made Lotus Sun wild with joy. Little Wang Ling was really too cute. When little Yu Yuqing had held his arm, his unsmiling little face had been full of helplessness. Just by looking at his expression, Lotus Sun could imagine what he had been thinking at the time. It could only be said that little Wang Ling was too easy to understand. Even if he didn't have any expression on his face, how could a child have any bad intentions? As Yu Yuqing played the video, she switched skillfully. This display wasn't to show off, but purely to share. Seeing Lotus Sun's unblinking gaze, she immediately said, "Do you want me to make a copy for you later? You can use the AI to change your face. You can just change my face to yours when you were a child." Is that okay? Lotus Sun was pleasantly surprised. At the same time, she hadn't expected Yu Yuqing to actually say that. Why not? In any case, it's all in the past. It's a fair competition now. Yu Yuqing smiled generously and meaningfully. That's right, I remember there was a video of Wang Ling almost destroying the Earth. Destroy the Earth? Yes, he almost fell when he was a child. Luckily, Uncle and Auntie reacted quickly and pulled him up right away. Let me look for this video. I remember it's in my camera. Yu Yuqing frowned slightly and started to look for the relevant video. She fiddled with the button, but the video suddenly switched to the footage from when they had just entered Li Xian's apartment. Wait! At that moment, Lotus Sun suddenly reached out and pressed the pause button. Is there a problem? Look, that white wall. I think there are words on it, said Lotus Sunday, did I? Yu Yuqing frowned and stared at the camera for a long time. Sure enough, she vaguely found that on the white wall that was captured by the camera, there were a few characters that were faintly emitting white light. However, because these characters were the same color as the wall, they were not very obvious and were very dim. If one did not look carefully, they would not be able to see them. What is this? Lotus Sun was puzzled. The thing Wang Ling hid from us earlier was these characters, right? He felt that these runes might be dangerous. That should be the case. Yu Yuqing nodded and said, but I feel like these characters are familiar, as if I've seen them somewhere before. You've seen it before? Lotus Sun was even more puzzled. I remember that the Manor Lord once wrote something similar, but I'm not sure if it's the same type. Yu Yuqing said. This was a new clue. Lotus Sun and Yu Huiqing had originally decided not to get involved in this matter, but this accidental discovery suddenly evoked a strong desire to investigate. What surprised Lotus Sun even more was that the mysterious characters on the white wall actually had something to do with the Manor Lord of Wind Thunder Manor. That was to say, this old Manor Lord might actually be one of the people involved in the sudden disappearance of this vlogger Li Xian. This accidental discovery made Lotus Sun and Yu Huiqing feel the complexity of the matter, as if a pair of invisible hands were pushing the whole thing forward. We have to ask the Manor Lord. Yu Huiqing immediately made the decision. That's not stable. Lotus Sun said, we still have to be more conservative. It's too risky with just the two of us. How about this? I know a few seniors. If we call them along, we'll be safe. Seniors. Yu Huiqing had a suspicious expression on her face. Then, Lotus Sun immediately took out her phone and sent a private message to each of the core management members of Battle Sect. Odd Jua, Monk Golden Lamp, Li Xian, Zhang Zipei, Qin Zong, Xiang Yi, Gu Xuanji, Wang Zhen, Lu Qingyi, these 9 people. In a short instant, Lotus Sun notified them all. Elsewhere, Wang Ling was still experiencing the events of the past in East Great Emperor's diary. His body's movements and conversations were automatic. Although he was already in his body and could control it, he didn't act rashly. If the events recorded in the diary were true, that meant that the diary itself represented a true event from the past. Wang Ling felt that if he did anything unusual or went against the normal behavior recorded in the diary, he could change history. Led by this white-robed chief steward Yi Ren, Wang Ling finally saw the envoy sent by West Great Emperor in the main hall of East Great Emperor's imperial palace. The envoy was dressed in a pitch-black robe and had a long white beard that cascaded down to his toes like a waterfall. Even in the face of East Great Emperor, this envoy didn't show any fear, and didn't care about East Great Emperor's imperial majesty at all. In such an environment, he stretched his hand out from the black robe and revealed a silver dagger. There was a mark of the 9-headed devil snake on it, which was the symbol of the West deity. It symbolized that he had come on behalf of the West deity. There was no doubt that this was an extremely rude provocation. Yi Ren was about to flare up, but the envoy of East Great Emperor stopped him with a meaningful look. But even East Great Emperor had obviously never seen such an arrogant envoy before. Then, he still sat on the wide golden vermilion bird throne in the posture of an emperor and accepted the worship of this envoy of West Great Emperor. External Envoy Yen Sanyang greets East Great Emperor. May East Great Emperor's great fortune fill the heavens. The voice wasn't too loud, but it echoed in the empty palace. Except for white-robed Chief Steward Yi Ren and a few old officials, the palace, which had originally been home to more than 100 officials, seemed incomparably empty under the echo of this shout. Based on the current development of the plot, Wang Ling could roughly guess that there had been a coup in East Great Emperor's imperial palace not long ago. Most of the officials in East Great Emperor's camp had switched sides, and now only these few people in the main hall were left to negotiate. Wang Ling hid in this East Great Emperor's body and patiently waited for the next development of the plot. Then, he heard what this envoy of West Great Emperor, Yen Sanyang, said. Yen Sanyang, in addition to reparations and the division of the Star Territory, I, West Master, have an additional request. If East Great Emperor agrees, we will release all the prisoners of war and immediately withdraw from the Star Territory. Hearing this, East Great Emperor was silent for a moment before he spoke in a deep and dignified voice. Let's hear it. I heard that East Great Emperor found a lost outer god palace on Carefree Star. It is said that there is a fragment of a top outer god's heart inside. Yen Sanyang said, I, West Great Emperor, request that East Great Emperor hand over what he found in this outer god palace. These words immediately caught Wang Ling's attention. A fragment of a top outer god's heart. That mysterious thing that was later called a mandate of heaven. The thing that Tao ancestor Wang had tried to seal after discovering it back then. Chapter 1848. Although Yan Sanyang's words seemed respectful, they were actually full of contempt. He didn't take this East Great Emperor seriously at all. He was very confident and had obviously come prepared. This was because he was not the only one who was sent to the East region. At this moment, the diplomatic group formed by the command of the West Emperor was waiting outside the East Emperor's palace in an orderly manner. Dozens of elders were the elites of the elites. Every single one of them had limitless potential, and they were all top-notch geniuses among the ancient ones. If they could obtain enough resources, they would definitely become almighty existences in the future, and they might even be able to form their own clans and compete for the position of Great Emperor. Such a terrible sense of oppression was like dark clouds covering the sun, wrapping the periphery of the East Great Emperor's imperial palace tightly, as if it would pour in at any moment. Wang Ling had already sensed this danger when he had been on the walls of the imperial palace earlier. He had been watching the show, and didn't know how this East Great Emperor would deal with it, let alone whether he had already sensed the danger outside. This was a group of terrible ancient ones, and each of them had the power to destroy a clan at will. They had already become a symbol of the divide in strength between the East and the West territories. In the East Great Emperor's palace, sitting on the supreme vermilion bird throne, he still didn't move, as if he had already expected this scene. His eyes were steady and confident as he glanced at Yan Sanyang, the envoy from the West. The vermilion bird's fire lingered around him, and his eyes burned, giving off a strong sense of deterrence. But Yan Sanyang knew that there was a lot of backup behind him. Even though he was frightened by the stare, he still braced himself. I hope East Great Emperor clearly understands how important this truce is to the East Territory. With this agreement, our two territories will be on good terms for at least 100 years and won't disturb each other. It will also give the East Territory some time to rest. If the East Great Deity is unwilling to accept my West Deity's favor, then you'd better be fully prepared for the consequences that will follow. He put his hands behind his back and spoke with a domineering face. In the end, he lost all his patience in the palace hall and revealed a ferocious look. Yan Sanyang, are you threatening my king? White-robed General Manager Yiren berated. He couldn't hold himself back either. The natural laws on his body surged and spiritual light surged. He had a strong urge to kill Yan Sanyang and then be satisfied. At this moment, the atmosphere in the Arch Palace suddenly turned cold. The two sides who were confronting each other were at daggers drawn, and it seemed like a fight would break out at any moment. However, at this moment, the Great East Emperor suddenly laughed. Yiren, don't be impatient. Immediately after, he stood up from the supreme throne and looked down at Yan Sanyang with a disdainful gaze. West Deity, are you that interested in the Outer Deity Palace that I discovered? Of course. Yan Sanyang snorted and said. If I say that I found a mysterious item in this Outer Deity Palace that can directly destroy a region, would the Western region still dare to touch me? The East Emperor narrowed his eyes and a ruthless look flashed across his face. His expression made Yan Sanyang sweat profusely. Because this was what the Great West Emperor was most worried about, the Outer Deity Palace was formed by the Outer Deity, a top expert among the rulers of the old days. It condensed all the power of the Outer Deity. Although it was called the Tomb of the Outer Deity, it was actually the essence of the Outer Deity's soul. If it could be successfully explored, it would definitely be able to obtain unimaginable benefits. However, apart from the few emperors and Tao ancestor Wang, there was probably no one else who dared to break into the Outer Deity Palace. The Great West Emperor was obsessed with this Outer Deity Palace and wanted to take it down. The most important reason was that he was worried that the Great East Emperor would enter the Outer Deity Palace alone and obtain something that he couldn't deal with. Those outer deities were powerful. Even if they were dead, the power of the items in the palace was still amazing. Therefore, the destruction of a region that the Great East Emperor said was not a joke. The most likely outcome was mutual destruction. In just a few words, Yan Sanyang was choked and speechless. But soon, he tried hard to regain his composure. Since the start of the war between the eastern and western regions, the Great East Emperor had been personally commanding the frontline battles. According to reason, there should be no opportunity to enter the outer deity palace to explore the secrets. Even if he did enter, the interior of the outer deity palace was too dangerous. Even if an emperor-level character entered without sufficient preparation, he would most likely die. He wouldn't be able to come out in a short period of time. In such a short period of time, this was an impossible task. In addition, the Great East Emperor looked unscathed. This made Yan Sanyang even more convinced that the Great East Emperor was deceiving him. Great East Emperor, if you have this ability, you should have used it earlier. In the main hall, after Yan Sanyang understood everything, he couldn't help but laugh out loud. In front of the supreme vermilion bird throne, the Great East Emperor saw this scene and his eyes became colder. His aura suddenly rose and directly oppressed Yan Sanyang. You are just a foreign envoy. You are not qualified to be so arrogant with me. The sound wave was transmitted, like the cry of the vermilion bird and the phoenix, with an extremely ear-piercing sound that shook the entire main hall. All the people on the Great East Emperor's side looked calm, but this phoenix cry instantly shocked Yan Sanyang to the point where he bled from his 7 orifices. That kind of ear-piercing memory constantly rippled in his mind, making his brain tumble. He knelt on the main hall on the spot. Boom! The Great East Emperor's body didn't move. He just raised a hand and pressed forward. A vermilion bird's shadow whizzed out from his sleeve, shocking everyone in the main hall. Under the deafening cry of the vermilion bird, all the people outside the Great East Emperor's imperial palace were alarmed. They instantly knew that the negotiation had collapsed. Rush in. Save Envoy Yen. The West Emperor has ordered that whoever takes the head of the Great East Emperor can become the new emperor. The envoys entrenched outside had already seen this scene. Every one of them seemed to have expected this scene and had made preparations. Once the negotiation collapsed, they would rush into the main hall together. However, the strength of the Great Emperor was incomparably amazing. When they approached the main hall, the envoy sent by the Great West Emperor, Yan Sanyang, had already died tragically. His face was scorched black, and he was directly roasted into a charred corpse by the vermilion bird's fire. His body was in a strange shape, and he died in extreme pain. Everything happened too fast, and they couldn't protect Yan Sanyang at all. At this time, looking at the dozens of Western region envoys suddenly breaking into the Great East Emperor's imperial palace, the Great East Emperor remained motionless. He looked down at the crowd of heroes and fixed his eyes on the crowd with the symbol of the 9-headed snake in front of him. The white-robed general manager, Yi Ren, looked at these people and instantly felt that the situation was not good. These people were carefully selected experts of the Western region, and each of them had the bloodline of the royal family. They were strong competitors for the Great Emperor in the future. In fact, even Yi Ren wouldn't have thought that the Great East Emperor, who had always been calm, would actually kill Yan Sanyang so bluntly. Although Yan Sanyang had provoked him first, the death of this foreign envoy meant that the negotiation had collapsed. At the same time, it also provided this group of elders from the Western region with an excuse to launch a new round of war. At this time, several old officials, led by Yi Ren, were solemnly waiting in the Great East Emperor's imperial palace. Even though this was an irreversible situation, everyone's faces showed that they were unafraid of death. Wang Ling was slightly moved by this scene. He had never witnessed a battle between ancient beings with his own eyes, and had never expected to see it so clearly today. It was like watching an epic battle between royal families. All the contentions in front of him were a game of power between ancient cultivators from ancient times. Chapter 1849. Wang Ling had never seen what a real emperor looked like. The East Great Emperor's domineering, dignified, and unyielding attitude in the face of the invading enemy was almost exactly what Wang Ling had in mind. He was high and lofty, and even when facing a group of ancient beings with royal bloodlines, he wasn't afraid at all. The vermilion bird flame in his eyes flickered, and a powerful primal chaos energy circulated around his body along with a mysterious force. This was the Emperor's primordial qi, which was actually the same type of substance as the primordial qi in Wang Ling's body, and usually only emperors had it. It was just that most primordial qi, including the emperors, had already taken shape and had an upper limit. Wang Ling's primordial qi was heaven-defying, and had no upper limit at all. Wang Ling had never sensed this kind of power from any of the ancient beings, including the Skeleton Prince, the Lion Man, and Meng Liuli. Even Monk Golden Lamp and Dao ancestor Wang's direct disciple Ping Shiren didn't have this kind of power. It could only be said that great emperors were truly extraordinary and out of the ordinary. Who dares to act rashly? At this time, the great East Emperor muttered to himself. His whole body was shrouded by the vermilion bird's flames. This was an unintentional and automatic defensive ability. Any flying objects near the great East Emperor, including long-range spells and hidden weapons, would be burned by the vermilion bird's flames the moment they got close. Then, he stared at one of the few women in the queue in front of him and muttered, "I didn't expect you to come too. Jiaoyang, you and I are of the same origin, but now you're betraying me in the midst of the enemy. How ridiculous." Everyone was stunned. The Blazing Sun Goddess was someone the Western Great Emperor had spent a great deal of money to recruit. This was the first time anyone had heard that the Blazing Flame Saint Fairy was actually from the same source as the Eastern Great Emperor. Goddess Jiaoyang's expression was tranquil, and she didn't show the slightest bit of anger when she heard East Great Emperor's words. She still maintained her graceful and moving posture as she took off her hood and stepped forward. Her posture made the heroes around her look dim. There was no doubt that Goddess Jiaoyang was a strong contender for the position of East Great Emperor, and was the woman most likely to directly take his head. She and the Great East Sovereign came from the same source. Naturally, she was very clear about the weaknesses of the Great East Sovereign. Even a great emperor-level expert couldn't be completely invincible. They also had a fatal weakness, but most people didn't know about it. A fine bird chooses a good tree to nest in. The Celestial Emperor's words smack of moral coercion. I didn't grow up in the Eastern Divine region and wandered around. You and I have no other connection except for some dispensable bloodline. She laughed and stared at the Great East Emperor. As a great emperor, you let your people of the same origin wander outside without a home to return to. Have you ever thought about how many people have looked down on me? But now, you only know how to talk. Your father rebelled a long time ago. This is a serious crime. Out of benevolence, I only punished your father and exiled your clansmen. The East Great Emperor opened his mouth, his expression dejected. It was obvious that the words of the goddess Jiaoyang had poked at his sore spot. The past was unbearable to recall. It was all in the past. Even the East Great Emperor himself didn't expect that a moment of benevolence would actually ignite the flames of revenge. We have gathered here today. With so many people of the royal bloodline gathered here, Celestial Emperor, you should know that you have no chance of winning today. When the goddess Jiaoyang heard about the past, the expression on her face didn't change at all. She still maintained a calm posture as she looked at the charred corpse of Yan Sanyang on the ground. Her eyes were biting cold. The Celestial Emperor in the West gave you one last chance, but unfortunately, you didn't cherish it. Humph. How can the majesty of an emperor be challenged? The East Great Emperor's tone was indifferent. He couldn't help but laugh out loud. Since all of you have broken into my main hall today, I have no choice but to annihilate all of you. Boom. The next moment, everyone in the main hall tacitly moved at the same time. Powerful spiritual energy collided in the air, forming a high pressure that immediately shook the dome of the entire main hall. "Do it!" someone shouted. The battle had already begun, so everyone had no scruples. Although some people knew that the goddess Jiao Yang had a high chance of winning, the battle for the head depended on each person's ability. If there was a chance to pick up the slack and be the first to get the head of the East Great Emperor, then they could also ascend to the throne. At the same time, because the goddess Jiao Yang was here, they had no fear when facing the East Great Emperor. She was the main attacker, and they only needed to interfere from the side. In their opinion, there were many ways to win. The East Great Emperor had ascended the throne for many years, and his emperor's aura had dried up. He had long entered his twilight years, and no one thought that the East Great Emperor could still be insufferably arrogant. Countless artifacts flew across the sky, illuminating the top of the imperial palace. All the attacks were concentrated in front, aiming at the East Great Emperor. At this moment, heaven and earth were silent. All kinds of chaotic aura intertwined, bringing with it a sense of deathly stillness. The white-robed general manager Yiren tried his best to protect the emperor, but he was pushed away by the goddess Jiao Yang's palm. Nine-tailed vermilion bird. Yiren was shocked. In that palm strike just now, he saw a nine-tailed vermilion bird rush out from the palm of the goddess Jiao Yang. His face turned pale with fright. If the East Great Emperor hadn't pushed him away from a distance with his palm force in time, he would have died if that palm strike had collided with him directly. He couldn't believe that the goddess Jiao Yang had cultivated the nine-tailed vermilion bird Dharma form. This was the highest realm of the vermilion bird technique. Even the East Great Emperor hadn't comprehended it, and now he was only at the level of an eight-tailed vermilion bird. That's not the nine-tailed vermilion bird. It's a fake nine-tailed vermilion bird. An old official of the East Great Emperor Palace was besieged by several people. He spat out blood, but he also clearly saw the scene just now. He was very sure that the nine-tailed vermilion bird was different, because the tail behind the vermilion bird was not the vermilion bird's plume, but 9 snake heads. Obviously, before coming here, the West Great Emperor had lent his power to the goddess Jiao Yang. She had originally cultivated the six-tailed vermilion bird, and now, with the power of the West Great Emperor, it was no wonder that she dared to directly lead the people to attack the East Great Emperor Palace. At this moment, the goddess Jiao Yang didn't hesitate and once again displayed the nine-tailed vermilion bird Dharma form. With an extremely strong aura, it swept across the entire area. When the Dharma form was displayed, it shocked the world. With an extremely strong aura, many people in the air swayed and fell to the ground. This pressure was too strong. They were too close to the goddess Jiao Yang, and they couldn't even stabilize their flying figures in the air, tarnishing the vermilion bird's bloodline. "How dare you!" An old official of the East Great Emperor Palace half knelt on the ground. He was shaken by this power until he bled from his 7 orifices. He was so angry that his whole body was trembling. "This is the power that the West Great Emperor bestowed upon me, and power is just a tool. It's fine as long as I can win." The goddess Jiao Yang's face was still as calm as an ancient well. She stared fixedly at the East Great Emperor in front of her. When the nine-tailed vermilion bird was displayed, the East Great Emperor was the most intuitive to feel the impact and crushing feeling of the power. In the blink of an eye, he felt the chi and blood in his body churn, and even the vermilion bird fire light protecting his body lost its effect. But what Wang Ling found very strange was that even in the face of this desperate situation, the East Great Emperor still showed no fear. Could it be that the East Great Emperor still had a trick up his sleeve? Hiding in the East Great Emperor's body, Wang Ling was very puzzled. The situation should be similar to what he had deduced. After all, there was a relatively complete record of the battle in the East Great Emperor's diary. If the East Great Emperor had died here, he probably wouldn't have completed the diary. While Wang Ling was pondering this, the East Great Emperor suddenly laughed loudly at the goddess Jiao Yang in front of him. Jiao Yang, may I ask, are you asking a god to possess you? Not really, I'm just borrowing power. The goddess Jiao Yang shook her head, inexplicably confident. She stared at the East Great Emperor with a sinister look in her eyes. As long as I can kill you, even if the West Great Emperor wants my body, I won't complain. But this is the worst step. I want to kill you with my own hands. Ha! To everyone's surprise, the East Great Emperor actually laughed again when he heard this. Do you think you're the only one who can ask a god to possess you? Speaking up to this point, his heart stirred. Immediately after, a voice rang out in Wang Ling's mind. Great God! What are you waiting for? Quickly possess me. Wang Ling. Chapter 1850. Wang Ling realized that compared with the great emperors of the ancient times, he was still a little younger. At that moment, the innocence of a young man was thoroughly destroyed by the craftiness of the great emperor. He had never thought that he would be schemed against by East Great Emperor, let alone that the history of the diary of East Great Emperor would actually be one in which he had been schemed against. At first, Wang Ling had been worried that his rash actions would change the course of history, but now it seemed that East Great Emperor had even planned this out. Wang Ling found this extremely strange. He had used Dao number 16 to enter the ancient cultivation world of the ancient people in the diary of East Great Emperor. This was his exclusive secret technique, and could be said to be a seamless and heaven-defying method. But East Great Emperor had been able to directly peer into the future. It would have been very difficult for East Great Emperor to peer into the distant future with his own strength, so Wang Ling suspected that East Great Emperor must have done something before Wang Ling had possessed him, which was why he had predicted his arrival. Wang Ling was certainly uncomfortable with such a scheme, but in order not to change the course of history, he had to act on his behalf. After the war, he would definitely ask East Great Emperor for an explanation. Even an emperor couldn't rely on their own strength to peer into the future tens of thousands of years into the future. At that moment, East Great Emperor's body was officially under Wang Ling's control. If you looked closely, you would see that the expression in his eyes had clearly changed. Above the ruined imperial palace, a powerful aura was released from the Great Emperor's body. At this point, the invading elders of West Great Emperor's forces, including goddess Jiao Yang, could clearly feel a chill on their backs. After East Great Emperor said, "Do you think you're the only one who can invite a god to possess you?" everything changed. The sudden emergence of an inexplicably powerful force crushed everyone present, like a god descending to the mortal world. Everyone who had spoken wildly just now couldn't help stepping back as a huge sense of fear welled up in their hearts. It was hard to describe this feeling in words. It was an extremely stifling and suffocating feeling. This was Wang Ling's first time fighting so many ancient people with royal blood, especially this goddess Jiao Yang, who had been given some of West Great Emperor's power to condense the nine-headed vermilion bird. The other party's strength could already be considered to be at the pseudo-Tharch level. Previously, he had suppressed the East Great Tharch. If the East Great Tharch hadn't felt that the situation was dangerous, he probably wouldn't have invited a god to possess him. Great East Emperor, why are you bluffing? Someone like you wants to be possessed by a god. An elder from the Great Western Emperor's faction said. Whether it's true or not, you'll know once you try. The East Great Emperor revealed a contemptuous smile. This wasn't Wang Ling replying, but East Great Emperor snatching the microphone while Wang Ling was controlling his body. Wang Ling's heart was burning with rage at this kind of behavior, but he had no choice but to act now. Because according to the course of history, all the invaders who broke into the palace in the diary of the Great East Emperor had a tragic ending. But it was obvious that the Great East Emperor had omitted some things in the diary. For example, when it came to inviting a god to possess him, he had only used a few strokes to play it down without mentioning a single word. Even Wang Ling couldn't have imagined that the god he had invited would be himself. It's useless no matter what you do. With me, the nine-headed vermilion bird, here, you will definitely die today. Goddess Jiaoyang spoke at that moment, her calm expression still revealing her confidence. Although she had noticed that East Great Emperor was completely different from just now, she had thought that he was bluffing. How could he really invite a god to possess him? And in such a short period of time, what kind of god would possess someone else's body so casually? Ha ha ha, today, we are about to witness history. A new empress has ascended the throne. And it's an empress. The elder from the Great Western Emperor's faction who had been clamoring earlier echoed and laughed again. Boom! Without another word, Wang Ling straightaway made a move with a powerful aura as he grabbed the elder as a warning to the rest. This palm strike was like an inescapable net that came from afar and directly caused the ground to quake. Since that's the case, this emperor will take you down first. At this critical moment, Great East Emperor and Wang Ling once again put on a two-man show. Wang Ling was in charge of attacking while Great East Emperor was in charge of speaking. Although the two of them didn't communicate much, there was no doubt that they had a clear division of labor at this moment. With me here, don't even think about succeeding, Goddess Jiaoyang said softly. A golden light flashed in her eyes, and a blazing light burst forth from her body. She was well aware that Great East Emperor wanted to kill a chicken to warn the monkeys and eliminate the clamoring person. However, if she allowed the East Great Emperor to have his way in front of her, she would lose all her face. In an instant, the nine-headed vermilion bird Dharma form released a black light in the air. The laws of darkness and light intertwined and condensed into hemp ropes that finally weaved into a dark vermilion bird cage that covered all the elders of Great West Emperor's faction. Wang Ling looked at this scene indifferently, his expression as calm as an ancient well. He didn't care about Goddess Jiaoyang's method at all, and he continued to attack. When his palm approached the dark vermilion bird cage, to Goddess Jiaoyang's surprise, his palm completely covered it. At this moment, the world was silent. Goddess Jiaoyang had never thought that this Great East Emperor would actually dare to directly grab the dark vermilion bird cage that she had woven with his bare hands. For a moment, there was an infinite silence in the air. A moment later, powerful spirit power surged out of Wang Ling's palm, and the supreme vermilion bird Dharma form emerged behind Great East Emperor. Vermilion bird fire, which was infinitely bright, directly burned the dark vermilion bird cage to ashes. At the same time, a powerful ripple surged out, and the clamoring elder was burned to ashes on the spot, leaving nothing behind. How is this possible? Goddess Jiaoyang's beautiful face turned pale. She had never expected Great East Emperor's vermilion bird Dharma form to actually become stronger. It was clearly an eight-tailed vermilion bird earlier. It had one fewer feather than her. At this moment, everyone was shocked. No one had expected that the vermilion bird Dharma form in the sky now actually had 81 feathers on its tail. It was like a peacock, and it even had a tail. This is no longer a vermilion bird. It's the Supreme Light Mahamayuri. The ultimate form above the nine-tailed vermilion bird. Yi Ren exclaimed. He and the elders of Great East Emperor, who were bathed in blood as they fought below, were horrified. Everyone's mouths were open so wide that a goose egg could be stuffed inside. In fact, even Wang Ling hadn't expected his own Dharma form spirit, which was the spirit of the universe, to actually possess someone else's Dharma form and directly evolve it into its ultimate form. The Supreme Light Mahamayuri soared through the sky, and the supreme nomological power of light unleashed infinite destruction in the sky above the Eastern Territory. At that moment, all kinds of magic artifacts on Great West Emperor's side were accurately shattered. Wang Ling was well aware that at this point, these invaders had no chance of survival. He stopped attacking, and instead returned control of his body to Great East Emperor. Once this battle was over, he would remove the fusion with the spirit of the universe. At the same time, the elders who had been shouting to seize the throne turned extremely pale. In a short period of time, Mahamayuri's light shone on them and then turned them into dried corpses before they turned to ashes. This was a shocking change that happened in the blink of an eye. At that moment, all the elders on Great East Emperor's side were moved, and all the tribes and people in the imperial territory shouted loudly. Eternal East Emperor! The vast eastern territory was now a boiling cauldron of voices, and everyone was chanting the 4 words, Eternal East Emperor. The appearance of the Supreme Light Mahamayuri gave everyone a great boost of morale. And to the invaders, this was definitely a disaster. This kind of Dharma idol was really too terrifying. In order to protect the tribes and people of the Eastern Territory, Great East Emperor was extremely decisive in his actions after being blessed with the power of God possession. Boom! In the next moment, he displayed Mahamayuri's nomological power of light again. Like a great sun, it released countless beams of light, and the cry of a phoenix rose between heaven and earth to clear the way for these beams of punishing light. Hum! Under the illumination of the light, dozens more people were directly killed by Great East Emperor's Mahamayuri Dharma form. Then, he controlled Mahamayuri to tear off all the snake tails on the back of Goddess Jiao Yang's 9-headed vermilion bird Dharma form. Goddess Jiao Yang's face turned pale when her Dharma form was damaged. The pain of her body being torn apart was immediately transmitted, and she spat out a large mouthful of blood. Chapter 1851. The huge Supreme Light Mahamayuri soared through the sky, all the feathers on his back spread out like a divine sun, shining in all directions, dispelling the darkness and bringing infinite light. When these rays of light pierced through the layers of clouds and haze and shone on the ground, the invisible pressure made the few survivors tremble. The East Great Emperor did not kill them all, but left a few of the weakest alive. He needed someone to witness this history, to warn all those who coveted the throne of the Eastern region. At the same time, the East Great Emperor didn't expect that the effect of this God possession would be so good. He didn't know what kind of god he had invited to directly upgrade his 8-tailed vermilion bird to Mahamayuri. Such strength was obviously above the emperor level. The 4 great emperors of the East, West, North and South could only be regarded as juniors in the face of such strength. Why is it like this? I didn't expect the East Great Emperor to still have this hidden card. Mahamayuri is so terrifying. The few surviving elders of the Western region turned pale. Although they did not die, they suffered internal injuries and their cultivation regressed by hundreds of years. Even if they had the blood of the royal family, this was a sign of great damage, which meant that they had lost the qualification to compete for the throne. For the East Great Emperor, this was definitely a glorious battle because the appearance of Mahamayuri not only deterred the foreign enemies, but also consolidated the hearts of the people, proving that the fate of the Eastern region's emperor was immortal. At the same time, the invaders from the Western region, including the proud Sun Goddess, did not expect that the East Great Emperor, who had always been benevolent, could also have a decisive side. At this time, the proud Sun Goddess took a few golden pills and attacked the East Great Emperor again, not giving up resistance. That was the peerless secret medicine given to her by the West Great Emperor, which could ignore pain for a short period of time, recover from injuries, and stimulate the potential of the body. At this moment, the damaged tail of the vermilion bird Dharma power form was rapidly recovering under the effects of the secret medicine. The severed snake heads grew back wildly, and there were still 9 of them. However, the shape of the heads had changed, becoming thicker than before. In the end, these snake heads grew dragon horns, and dragon roars rose and fell, hissing in the sky. Under the blessing of the secret medicine, the proud Sun Goddess directly entered a berserk state, and actually went berserk together with the vermilion bird. The romance of the dragon and snake. This is the 9 dragons vermilion bird. In the distance, someone cried out in alarm. Seeing the goddess transformation, everyone revealed an expression of disbelief. At the same time, Goddess Jiao Yang was wantonly roaring, her ear-piercing cries accompanied by the roars of a dragon. Her petite and curvaceous body seemed somewhat out of place. It could be seen that Goddess Jiao Yang was in great pain. Because of the secret medicine, her latent potential had been forced out. Although her battle prowess had been greatly enhanced, the powerful medicinal energy in her body was also a test of her body's endurance. She had to fight while enduring the pain of her body being torn apart. The cultivators of the eastern and western regions were shocked. A few secret medicines could actually cause the Dharma idol to undergo changes in the romance of the dragon and snake. This secret medicine definitely contained the blood of an ancient dragon. Some people had seen the Great Western Emperor use secret medicine to evolve his Dharma idol, but it wasn't as painful as the goddess Jiao Yang. Since then, the Great Western Emperor's secret medicine containing dragon blood had become a legend that had been circulating outside. Many people couldn't believe that this was actually true. Only the power of dragon blood could make the Hydra resonate like this. Compared to before, Goddess Jiao Yang's aura had risen a lot in such a short period of time. The Great Eastern Emperor frowned. At this moment, with the Mahamayuri Dharma idol, he was no longer afraid of anything. Out of kinship, he saw that Goddess Jiao Yang was trying hard to adapt to the impact of the secret medicine, so he didn't immediately make a move. Instead, he deliberately waited for a while. Back then, when the Great Eastern Emperor had punished Goddess Jiao Yang's father for attempting to rebel, he had no choice but to do so. He would never have thought that in the following days, Goddess Jiao Yang would be targeted by the Great Western Emperor and become a tool for revenge. At this moment, his heart was filled with emotion, but the arrow was already knocked on the bowstring and had to be released. After waiting for a while, Goddess Jiao Yang had clearly adapted to the pain. Her originally ferocious face returned to its most beautiful appearance. She used to be like the morning sun, but now her body was emitting embers from the setting sun. Her snow-white and translucent body was covered with traces of the secret medicine's impact on her blood vessels, forming a faint golden pattern that was like a print along her long white neck all the way down to her ankles. At this moment, Goddess Jiao Yang's body carried a strong aura of death, which was accompanied by the sound of dragons roaring all around her. Almost in the blink of an eye, her figure moved. She was as fast as a beautiful and delicate dragon. She directly appeared in front of the East Great Emperor and whipped her leg at his head. Chi! The Great Eastern Emperor reacted quickly and directly raised his left arm to grab Goddess Jiao Yang's snow-white ankle in his hand. The woman in front of him clearly had a strong mix of anger and hatred in her eyes. Her expression was calm, even when her ankle was grabbed. In the blink of an eye, Goddess Jiao Yang's beautiful eyes burst into flames. She directly damaged her body and burned her ankle. That snow-white beautiful foot instantly turned into a cloud of flying ash in the Great Eastern Emperor's palm. Then, her broken foot began to regenerate, returning to its original appearance at a speed visible to the naked eye. Dragon energy protection: even if the head is broken, it can still be restored. The old ministers of the Great Eastern Territory were all frightened. They didn't expect the battle to develop to this point. In the next moment, Goddess Jiao Yang attacked again. The 9 vermilion birds behind her spat out flames. Under the cover of the scorching and dazzling fire mist, the 9 dragons at the end extended their long bodies and used their strongest power to sweep away thousands of enemies. They actually formed a body array with their bodies and drilled into the ground of the imperial palace, deeply rooting themselves in it. This was extracting the emperor's fate under the Great Eastern Territory. Even the underground spirit veins were absorbed by the 9 dragons' array, becoming a constant source of nutrients for Goddess Jiao Yang. Then, Goddess Jiao Yang's aura became significantly stronger. Everyone turned pale with shock. Just what kind of terrifying power was this? The people from the Eastern and Western territories were all dumbfounded. There was no doubt that this kind of continuous absorption of the underground spirit veins and the Empire's fate was a kind of self-destructive behavior. Once the body couldn't withstand such pressure, there was the danger of directly exploding. And the great Eastern Emperor suddenly understood what Goddess Jiao Yang was doing at this time. He sighed. It turned out that from the beginning, Goddess Jiao Yang had no intention of surviving. This was the purpose of directly perishing together with him. Originally, the great Eastern Emperor still had a trace of benevolence and didn't want to kill Goddess Jiao Yang. But now, for the sake of his people, he had to do it. He wanted to use the Supreme Light Mahamayuri to eat these 9 dragons like earthworms. Chapter 1852. The 9 dragons' vermilion birds' 9 huge dragon heads were deeply rooted in the ground, like pillars from the sky, wantonly plundering the empire's luck and underground spirit veins. Goddess Jiao Yang absorbed a steady stream of energy, causing the energy density of her petite body to increase. Everyone present felt a strong sense of danger. There was no doubt that this was a method of mutual destruction. This woman is crazy. The surviving members of the royal family from the western regions were all stunned. However, at this time, they had no strength to escape because their bodies were injured. Even if they escaped now, they wouldn't be able to escape far. Once the body of Goddess Jiao Yang exploded, the impact would cover the entire eastern regions of the universe. Not only the land under their feet, but all the planets within this range would be destroyed as well. The East Emperor's expression gradually became indifferent under the pressure of Goddess Jiao Yang. He didn't want to see the situation of fighting against his own kind. However, as an emperor, he had to carry out what he should do as an emperor. He was not afraid at all. With the protection of the Supreme Light Peacock Wisdom King, he had enough confidence to deal with the current situation. At this moment, the East Emperor had the majesty of a great emperor. He ignored the pressure of the 9 dragons and stood proudly in the sky. His every move was in harmony with heaven and earth. Buzz! In an instant, intense light surged from his body. It was boundless light that emanated from his body, from the Paragon Mahamayika Dharma idol. It was endless. It's the great emperor's mystic power. Everyone present revealed a look of surprise. The East Emperor was using this power to compete with Goddess Jiao Yang for the empire's luck and the power of the spirit veins under his feet. Because of his identity as a great emperor, using the mystic power of the great emperor didn't require the complicated operation of Goddess Jiao Yang. As the ruler of the eastern regions, as long as he stood there, he could cause an impact and form a long-range competition. In modern terms, Goddess Jiao Yang was like a network cable, while the East Emperor was connected to Wi-Fi. The two were competing for network speed. No one thought that the speed of the East Emperor's long-range competition was so amazing. He stood proudly in the sky and snatched food from the dragon's mouth, as if he was commanding the entire world. Chi 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 chi, accompanied by the sound of countless feathers falling, the Supreme Light Peacock Wisdom King launched a counterattack at the same time. While helping the East Emperor compete, it inserted the feathers into the spine of the 9 dragons. Beneath the ground, the 9 dragons let out pained cries, causing a huge earthquake on the spot. The great East Emperor seized the opportunity and formed a fist seal. Stepping on light, he aimed a punch at the Goddess Jiao Yang. A blazing radiance burst forth from his fist, piercing through the heavens and smashing into Goddess Jiao Yang's body, instantly sending her flying. He didn't hold back at all, and the weight of his fist was unimaginably heavy. Goddess Jiao Yang didn't expect that the East Great Emperor would still be able to divert his attention to attack her even though he was trying so hard to compete with her for the empire's luck and spirit veins. Everyone was shocked. Everyone felt that they had underestimated the power of the radiant Supreme King Mahamayuri. The people from the eastern and western regions had forgotten about each other at this moment. They were all discussing the battle below, and all of them were dumbfounded. This Dharma form is too heaven-defying. It can suppress the 9 dragons' vermilion bird. Even if Goddess Jiao Yang swallowed the West deity's secret medicine to upgrade it, it would still be useless. This light supreme King Mahamayuri can be said to be invincible. It's really strange. Why did the East Great Emperor's Dharma form suddenly upgrade, and he didn't even take the secret medicine? Could he have really been possessed by a god? Where did this god come from? Above the Great Emperor is Tao Ancestor Wang, but how could the venerable Tao Ancestor Wang make a move so easily? But with this light supreme King Mahamayuri, the East Great Emperor might become Tao Ancestor Wang's successor. The old officials and members of the royal family of the two regions were talking below at this moment, forgetting their previous hostility. On the one hand, they were attracted by the battle in the sky, and on the other hand, they couldn't fight anymore. In the face of this kind of battle, the rest of the fight was already completely meaningless. Given the East Great Emperor's current abilities, he could destroy them with a snap of his fingers. The radiant fish shook the goddess Jiao Yang out of the sky, and the East Great Emperor seized the opportunity to immediately manipulate the light supreme King Mahamayuri to launch a counterattack. In just a few seconds, the 9 dragons had swallowed up the Empire's luck and the power of the spirit veins. Not only that, even the energy of the 9 dragons had been plundered by light supreme King Mahamayuri. Using East Great Emperor's body to watch the battle, Wang Ling saw from a distance that the 9-headed dragon that had taken root in the ground began to shrink rapidly, as if it were riding on an earthworm in a short period of time. The Supreme Light Peacock Wisdom King Dharma form that he had strengthened for the East Great Arch was simply too powerful. This was simply a cheat. There was no need for the East Great Emperor to do anything himself. He had already cleaned up the entire battle in front of him. The 9 dragons' vermilion bird were instantly devoured. Such an ending was hard to believe. She had clearly used the power that the Great Western Emperor had bestowed upon her, but she was still defeated. Her pure white body was dripping with blood, like a white flower oozing with fresh blood. Boz! The Great East Emperor slowly walked to the front of the goddess Jiao Yang. Without any hesitation, he raised his hand, and the palm of his hand shone with boundless radiance, gushing towards the goddess Jiao Yang. Under everyone's gazes, goddess Jiao Yang finally disappeared, melting into the boundless light without leaving a trace. It's all over. East Great Emperor sighed in his heart and thanked Wang Ling at the same time. Thank you for your help, great god. Are you sure? Wang Ling replied succinctly. This battle was a battle to establish a nation. The Great West Emperor has always been cautious. Now that he knows that my Dharma form has been promoted to the Supreme Light Peacock Wisdom King, he won't easily make a move against my eastern territory. The Great East Emperor slowly said to Wang Ling, this battle has won at least 2,000 years of peace for the people of my eastern territory. At least for the duration of my term, the other forces won't dare to make a move against my eastern territory again. After saying that, he flicked his sleeve and looked at the white-robed general manager. Yi Ren, I'll leave the rest to you. Send away all the invaders. From now on, they're not allowed to take even half a step into my eastern territory. Yes. Yi Ren bowed. Before he left, the Great East Emperor's fingertips pulsed with light and healed the injuries of all the old officials of the Eastern Territory who had participated in the battle at the speed of light. After doing all this, he stepped into the back garden of the Imperial Palace. At this point, Wang Ling saw what the Imperial Garden of the Eastern Territory Imperial Palace looked like. It used to be a large field of spirit herbs, but many of them had been destroyed during the battle, which made the Great East Emperor secretly sigh in his heart. But Wang Ling didn't care for any of these spirit herbs. Any one of the ones in his king's treasure pants was more outstanding than these. The purpose of the Great East Emperor coming to the Imperial Garden wasn't to show Wang Ling the ruins, but to directly enter the secret passage that led to the underground palace. It was the location of the East Emperor's underground depository of scriptures. According to the records in the Great East Emperor's diary. After the battle, the Great East Emperor had spent 6 hours alone in the depository of scriptures. After entering the underground depository of scriptures, the Great East Emperor sat on a futon and sighed. I know that great God must have a lot of questions for me, so I deliberately left some time for you to ask them. Chapter 1853. About an hour ago in the real world. On the other side, after notifying everyone, Lotus Sun immediately took Yu Yuqing to grenade-throwing senior immortals Wenxian Garden, where they had chosen to gather. They arrived late, and by the time they got there, the 9 people they had notified were already sitting neatly in the villa, chatting. Little Silver, dressed in a black suit, was serving tea on the side like a steward. He was even wearing leather shoes, and was no longer barefoot. It seemed that grenade-throwing senior immortal had taught him well during this period of time. Yu Yuqing didn't know most of the people here, and was even dumbfounded when she saw them. But there was one person she couldn't possibly not know. "You're that Audra." Yu Yuqing was utterly astonished. She hadn't expected to see him here. When she had heard Lotus Sun's call earlier, she had thought it was someone with the same name, and hadn't expected the person to actually be Audra himself, the man who had knocked down a 5th-class demon king 7 years ago. "It's me." Audra smiled amiably as usual. He shook hands with Yu Yuqing of his own accord without putting on any airs. On their way here, Lotus Sun had told Audra about Yu Yuqing, including how she had deduced Wang Ling's extraordinary ability based on her own abilities. It was necessary to let everyone know about Yu Yuqing in advance. It wasn't that they had to be wary of her. They were childhood sweethearts, so how could they have any bad intentions? After a simple handshake, Audra said, "I've also heard of Daoist Yu's reputation. In my department, many of my subordinates have gone to Wind Thunder Manor to ask for their fortune." "That's right, someone from the general administration of 100 schools did come." Yu Yuqing then smiled. "But how did Director Zhuo get to know student Lotus Sun?" "She's my junior sister. I'm also from number 60 high." "I see." Yu Yuqing nodded in sudden realization. "Do you need me to introduce the others to Daoist Yu?" "No need, Director Zhuo. Student Lotus Sun already introduced them to me on the way here. I'm not face-blind, and I have a good memory. I can match all the seniors' faces, don't worry." "Very well, then let's get down to business." Audra nodded in satisfaction, then turned to Golden Lamp Monk. Monk Jin Deng unhurriedly took out a book of quotations from the Master of the Wind and Thunder Heights. Lotus Sun's eyes went wide. "How did Senior Golden Lamp get it?" Monk Gold Lamp said solemnly. "Before I came here, I went to the Wind Thunder Manor in person and retrieved the quotations of the Master of the Wind Thunder Manor, which is suspected to be a record of mysterious runes." Yu Yuqing was also stunned. "So the Manor Lord gave it to you just like that?" Monk Jin Deng nodded. "Villa Master, you've heard of my name." "I only said that I passed by this place while cultivating and could consecrate an item for you for free. I didn't expect the Villa Master to give me this quote without hesitation. However, the formal light consecration takes time. Therefore, the Wind Thunder Manor's Manor Lord has allowed this penniless monk to bring the sayings back first. What if the Manor Lord doesn't have this book of quotations?" "That's impossible." Tyrant smiled, "Because I'm bringing little friend Qin Zong along. Xiang Yi and Zhang Ziden will be accompanying them as well." Lotus Sun was shocked. "So if we can't borrow it, Senior wants Senior Xiang Yi and Senior Zhang to steal it, that's not right." Zhang Ziden crossed his arms and snorted proudly. "We're all cultured people. It's not like we won't return this book of quotations. At most, it's a loan." Lotus Sun and Yu Yuqing, although it still felt a little weird, at least the seniors working together could be considered efficient. Lotus Sun remembered that Xiang Yi and Zhang Ziden had previously made a private agreement to compete legally and in compliance with the rules to see who was the strongest lockpicker. Originally, the two of them had agreed to look for residents in their designated areas who could not enter their homes and needed a locksmith. They would provide free lockpicking services, and the one who helped the most people within the same amount of time would be awarded the title of the strongest lockpicking king. Unfortunately, due to time constraints, the competition between the two had yet to be completed. Lotus Sun didn't know what the meaning of winning this title was, but to be honest, sometimes a man's happiness was just that simple. Just as Lotus Sun was in a daze, a familiar voice reached her ears. The video that Daoist you sent earlier did indeed have faint mysterious text on it. We've also compared it with this book of quotations. The handwriting is almost the same. Gu Xuanji rubbed the space between his eyebrows. But at the moment, we can't be sure that this mysterious text was written by the Lord of Wind Thunder Villa himself. Why do you think so? Lotus Sun asked. Because the book used to record the Lord of Wind Thunder Villa's quotations is an antique. It's very thick, like a dictionary. The overall material of the quotation is also very special. Even after 10,000 years, the words on it will still be clearly visible, and the paper will be as clean as new without the slightest wrinkle. Gu Xuanji's lips curved as he said, so we now suspect that the Lord of Wind Thunder Villa used this book of quotations a second time. The first half recorded the mysterious text, while the second half recorded the quotation written by the Lord of Wind Thunder Villa himself. Then, seniors, have you found a way to crack the quotation? Yu Huiqing asked as she sat down. She took a sip of the tea that Little Silver had poured for her, and felt that the tea was rich and refreshing, which instantly lifted her spirits. This was the best tea in the world, almost on par with the tea leaves at Lotus Sun's house. But given Ajua's current status, Yu Huiqing didn't think it strange that he could produce such tea leaves. She had always thought that Wenxian Garden Villa was Ajua's home, but if she had known that it was grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's home, she might have been even more astonished by Lotus Sun's connections. Earlier, we took turns to examine it. This mysterious text is indeed very mystical. It's not something an ordinary person can decipher. Li Xian said. He exchanged glances with the others, but in the end, he did not reveal the matter of the Ancient One in front of Yu Huiqing. Lu Qingyi held Wang Zhen's arm and said, so, the most likely way to succeed right now is to try it out. I can only let Senior Golden Lamp try. Speaking up to this point, Lotus Sun also remembered that Monk Golden Lamp had the swastika talisman, and was also protected by the Buddha fire of the past, present and future. Even if the swastika talisman was damaged by deciphering the mysterious text, it could be repaired by the Buddha fire. It was just that this test also worried Monk Golden Lamp. After all, from what Lotus Sun had said earlier, Wang Ling didn't want anyone to get involved in this matter. So the monk was still conflicted. Of course, the most important thing was these mysterious texts. Monk Golden Lamp never thought that after living for so many lifetimes, there would actually be texts that he had never seen before. He was worried that if he went too deep after using the swastika talisman, he might directly enter the preset scene of the writing of the mysterious text and form a soul interaction. If he went too deep, he might be trapped in this world constructed by the mysterious text and never be able to get out. Chapter 1854. Golden Lamp Monk's concerns weren't unreasonable. After all, even Wang Ling had issued a warning that he didn't want anyone else to get involved. But in the end, the people who understood the immemorial ones the best were the immemorial ones. Wang Ling was invincible in the universe, but it was still very difficult to sort out some of the historical secrets and the complexity of the immemorial ones in a short time. The immemorial ones were like a big, intricate problem. Even if there were thousands of ways to solve it, there was often only one path to the truth. Let this poor monk see what's inside, Golden Lamp Monk said in a steady voice. This was a mysterious character of the immemorial ones he had never seen before, and it might be risky to peek at it. Perhaps sensing that his direct test might cause damage to his eyeballs, he directly wrapped 2 balls of Buddha fire around the swastikas and used his power of sight to penetrate it. No one knew what would happen after Golden Lamp Monk's test. Everyone stared unblinkingly at the monk. Li Xian, Zhang Ziden, Qin Zong and Xiang Yi sat in a circle around Golden Lamp Monk. They were the 4 strongest people here, and they formed a human flesh spirit array to protect the monk. Will it be dangerous? The atmosphere was far more tense than Lotus Sun had imagined, and in the end, even her breathing had clearly become rapid. I'll do the divination. Yu Yuqing was also very nervous. She hurriedly took out the little turtle shell, closed her eyes, and entered a meditative state. When the ancient coin inside the turtle shell made a crisp sound, it fell out of the crack at the bottom of the turtle shell. Then it stood steadily on the floor. It's an unknown divination, and the danger is unknown. Yu Yuqing's face was immediately filled with astonishment. She had never encountered an ancient coin standing upright on the floor after it fell out of the turtle shell. The probability of this happening was minuscule. That was to say, there was no way she could predict anything about Golden Lamp Monk. How could this be? Yu Yuqing frowned slightly, lost in thought. To rule out the possibility of a coincidence, she stuffed the ancient coin back into the turtle shell, and once again entered an ethereal and calm state as she tried to do the divination. Ding ding, the second time, the ancient coin fell from the small turtle shell. After swaying a few times, it stood upright on the floor. It standing up again, Lotus Sun also gazed at the ancient coin, which was like a straight man made of steel, lost in thought. The first time was a coincidence, but both times, it was standing on the floor. The probability was too low. Lotus Sun couldn't help sweating on her forehead. The water here was too deep. Perhaps they really wouldn't be able to grasp it with just the few of them. She had never seen such a divination before. Even Yu Yuqing did not expect it to happen twice in a row. Then again, what kind of divination was the scariest? Yu Yuqing would have been fine if it was those ominous signs. Therefore, it was always the divinatory signs that were full of the unknown that were the scariest. Buzz. At the same time, in the villa of Wenxian Garden, with monk Jin Dang as the center, a powerful fluctuation came out of the monk's body, setting off a powerful spiritual wave. At the same time, the monk's swastika was bleeding, and tears of blood kept flowing from the corner of his eyes. It was clear that in the process of infiltrating the mysterious text, the swastika was already in a state of high stress, and it was already difficult for it to withstand. Jua, Gu Xuanji, Wang Zhen and Lu Qingyi reacted quickly, and the remaining 4 immediately surrounded Lotus Sun and Yu Yuqing to form another human formation to protect them first. Little Silver, on the other hand, held a kitchen knife and looked like he was ready to offer his blood at any moment. Like Loopy Toad, he was already a divine beast. Coupled with the special healing ability of the Silver Wildebeest clan, Little Silver's blood was almost a natural panacea for healing. This fluctuation of spirit power was so intense that everyone thought that grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's villa was about to explode. At that moment, the veins on Monk Jin Dang's temples bulged. He put his palms together, and with an angry shout, he actually forcibly suppressed this fluctuation of spirit power. Lotus Sun, did you suppress it? Jua, it looks like it's under control, but I still feel that something isn't right. The rest of them stepped forward to take a look, and saw that Monk Jin Dang and the 4 people guarding him, Zhang Ziden, Li Xian, Xiang Yi and Qin Zong, were all hanging their heads and closing their eyes, as if they were disconnected. Although they could feel their even breathing, no matter how much Jua yelled, they didn't respond at all. This isn't good. They might have fallen into the world of this mysterious text, Gu Xuanji shouted in a low voice, almost immediately voicing his thoughts. You can even experience this in an immersive way. After all, this is a mysterious text that even Senior Jin Dang has never seen before, so it's not surprising that it has this kind of power. Gu Xuanji frowned. In this state, it's very difficult to wake them up using normal methods. Furthermore, they've entered an unknown world. At the moment, we can't be sure if they've fallen into a state of soul transmigration. If they're in a soul transmigration state, if they're in danger in that world, they might also be seriously injured. On the other hand, if they don't act according to the script recorded in the mysterious text, they might change the current trajectory of the world. After the analysis, Lotus Sun immediately knew that they were in big trouble. She was extremely remorseful that she shouldn't have disobeyed Wang Ling and forcibly intervened in this matter. The scene was silent for about 10 seconds. Faced with the situation in front of them, the rest of them didn't know how to deal with it. Can't we wake them up? Should we try slapping them? Wang Zhen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. In fact, he wasn't sure if he could do it this way, but it seemed that he couldn't think of any other way at the moment. Without another word, he stepped forward and directly chose to slap Zhang Zidong. Did Senior Zhang really offend Brother Wang Zhen? Lotus Sun asked weakly. Not really, it's just that I heard that he has a dark history of stealing people, so I'm a little upset, Wang Zhen answered truthfully. The rest of the people, there's no other way, we can only try it as a last resort. Wang Zhen was a bold master, but as soon as he slapped Zhang Zidong in the face, he instantly twitched as if he had been electrocuted. Wang Zhen! Watch out! Lu Qingyi was anxious when she saw this, and hurriedly rushed forward. Don't go, it's dangerous. Yu Huiqing was quick to react, and immediately pulled Lu Qingyi back. Sister Qingyi. Daoist Yu. Lotus Sun also reacted quickly, and immediately released Mysterious Sea's sword Qi in an attempt to make it resemble a long whip and pull Aojue back. Shifu, it's dangerous. Aojue knew that things weren't looking good, and hurriedly tried to save him. But in the end, he was still a step too late, and with his final heart-wrenching cry. Just like that, in the form of Calabash brothers saving Grandpa, the remaining four entered the world outlined by the mysterious text together with Zhang Zidong's body. Chapter 1855. In a daze, Lotus Sun woke up. Her consciousness was clear, and she could still remember what had just happened. That's right. In order to save someone, they had linked up with Zhang Zistiel's body like the Calabash brothers saving their grandpa. Then, in the blink of an eye, her body began to twitch as if she had been electrocuted, and a mysterious force pushed her soul out of her body and into a mysterious vortex. When she woke up, she found herself covered in bandages and lying in a place full of light. Boundless light shone in from the huge floor-to-ceiling windows and fell on the side of the bed. The vermilion gauze curtain, which was embroidered with the mark of the vermilion bird, fluttered in the wind. Lotus Sun immediately realized that she had entered an unknown territory. Just as monk Jin Dang had said at the beginning, they had probably fallen into the world outlined by the mysterious text together. What should I do? Lotus Sun got up, and very quickly realized that this body wasn't hers. This was because she could clearly feel that her chest had become much heavier. This shouldn't be something that someone her age should be able to do. So even if she didn't look in the mirror, she clearly knew that she wasn't her real self right now. Only her soul was her own. Are you there? The strong sense of unfamiliarity made her feel a little uncomfortable. She tried to call out to Sun Yinger, but she didn't respond at all. Could it be that because this body didn't belong to her, the shadow also didn't belong to her? Was that why she couldn't resonate with Sun Yinger? Or perhaps Sun Yinger had also entered this world constructed by the mysterious text and was playing a certain role. For a moment, she didn't know what to do. Fortunately, she could feel that the resonance between her and Mysterious Sea was still there, and she was on standby. As long as she wanted to, Mysterious Sea could still be summoned to protect her at any time. But she didn't dare to act rashly now. If the world here is like what those seniors said, a world of the past outlined by the primordial ones, then the primordial ones, then everything I do here that goes against the course of history might change the future. Closing her eyes, Lotus Sun lay on the bed, calmed her thoughts, and analyzed the situation at hand. Her top priority was to know who her role in this world was. Since you're awake, stop pretending. The Emperor spared your life, but it doesn't mean that the rest of us have forgiven you. At this moment, a young and magnetic voice sounded out from the side. Yi Ren, the white-robed chief steward of the Great East Emperor, slowly walked out from the side door. His footsteps were very light, and his clothes were slightly messy. It was obvious that he had just finished dealing with some important matters, and then he came here looking travel-worn. "Where is the Emperor?" Lotus Sun asked. She was merely playing along with the conversation, mainly to find out her identity. "Jiaoyang, you don't have the right to take the initiative to meet the Emperor," Yi Ren said solemnly. "The Blazing Sun. So, this is her name." Moreover, judging from the current situation, Lotus Sun felt that this Blazing Sun must have made a mistake. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been beaten to this state. The most likely outcome was that Jiaoyang had fought with the Emperor mentioned by the white-robed general manager. Then, at the critical moment of life and death, the person called the Emperor had spared Jiaoyang's life. After waking up, she'd entered the body of Lady Jiaoyang. However, entering the body wasn't the key. The key question now was how she was going to return to the original real world. "Sorry, I don't remember anything." Helpless, Lotus Sun could only feign ignorance. She couldn't pretend in this situation, and it would instead give people clues. Thus, amnesia was always a very effective excuse. Since it was amnesia, it wouldn't be too strange for her to behave differently from before. "You've committed a heinous crime, and you want to use amnesia to cover it all up." Yi Ren laughed. He clasped his hands behind his back and stared at her. "You should be able to move now, right? Get up and follow me to a place. The Emperor wants to see you later." Lotus Sun had no choice but to comply. After all, she couldn't do anything that would go against the course of history. At this moment, her body was wrapped in layers of bandages, and she looked like a walking mummy. Yi Ren threw a robe at her, and after putting it on, she looked even more indistinguishable from a ghost. This slightly startled Lotus Sunday. She looked woodenly at Yi Ren. "Senior, what I've committed is a crime punishable by death. I can't believe I'm able to become your goddess Jiaoyang Senior. It seems that you really don't remember anything." A meaningful smile appeared in Yi Ren's eyes. "In the past, you were so arrogant and would never be so polite to others. Jiaoyang, compared to the current you, I admire your wild and unruly self more." "You still haven't answered my question," Lotus Sun said solemnly. "That's right." Yi Ren nodded slightly and looked at her. "Since you don't remember anything, I'll tell you. You colluded with the Great Western Emperor and led a group of Western regions royalty in an attempt to rebel. This debt is enough for you to die 10 million times over." As he spoke, Yi Ren led Lotus Sun through the long winding corridors of the palace. All the guards here had been withdrawn, and Lotus Sun saw that her surroundings were in a mess. There were broken walls and rubble everywhere, clearly traces of a recent battle. The style of the room just now was clearly quite modern, but now that they were on the periphery, it was actually in the style of an ancient palace. This made Lotus Sun even more amazed by this mysterious world. Since this mysterious text had come from the hands of the Ancient One, Lotus Sun deduced that she might be trapped in the world of the Ancient One. As he led Lotus Sun away, Yi Ren said, "At present, only I know that the Emperor chose to spare your life in the end. I hope that you won't make any more disobedient moves, otherwise not even Tao Ancestor Wang will be able to save you. You've also seen the Emperor's Supreme Light, Mahamayuri, that's an invincible existence, so in the eyes of others, I'm already dead. You were burned to ashes by Mahamayuri's light." This scene was seen by everyone in the eastern regions, otherwise it wouldn't be enough to appease the common people, Yiren said. After walking for about 10 minutes, the two finally arrived in front of a locked palace. This was a relatively well-preserved building in the Great Eastern Emperor's palace after the war. Lotus Sun thought that Yiren would directly open the door, but to her surprise, he didn't take out the key. Instead, he grabbed the palace's spirit lock and began to study it. In the end, he slowly took out an iron wire from his sleeve. Lotus Sun was stunned. The other party was clearly the Emperor's man, so why would he use an iron wire to open his own palace? In that instant, realization dawned on Lotus Sunday. She stared at Yiren's back and asked tentatively, may I ask if you're Senior Xiang Yi or Senior Zhang Zipei? As soon as she said this, Yiren's figure clearly froze. Then he turned his head back in shock. I'm Zhang Zipei, could it be that you're Miss Lotus Sun? Chapter 1856. After confirming their gazes, she had met the right person. Lotus Sun had never imagined that she would run into Zhang Zipei so soon. And most importantly, Zhang Zipei had disguised himself extremely well. If it weren't for his habit of casually taking out the wire, Lotus Sun probably wouldn't have been able to tell that this was Zhang Zipei himself. Lotus Sun concluded that the reason why Zhang Zipei could disguise himself so well was mainly because he was originally an eternal being. Since he was an eternal being, he should also have some understanding of this period of history. Of course, there was another possibility, which was that Zhang Zipei's memory synchronization with this body was better than hers. Lotus Sun felt that perhaps Goddess Jiaoyang really had lost her memory, which was why she hadn't received any memories of her. I didn't expect Miss Sun to have actually entered Goddess Jiaoyang's body. This time, even Zhang Zidi was horrified. Fortunately, he finally met someone he was familiar with, which made Zhang Zidi feel relieved at the same time. However, this greeting made Lotus Sun a little nervous. Hey, not following the script, is it okay? Miss Sun doesn't need to worry too much. As long as you do what you set out to do within the stipulated time and according to the historical trajectory, it won't affect the future. It won't affect the future. After saying this, Zhang Zipei couldn't help but sigh. The key now is how to find the others. And how to get out of this mysterious old world. As long as we complete this period of history recorded in the mysterious text and complete the process as it was, it'll be fine, right? In theory. Zhang Zipei nodded. But I still feel that this is a trap set up by someone behind the scenes, and it has been planned for many years. I'm afraid the purpose behind it isn't that simple. This is a great means of crossing timelines in space. Even that guy Golden Lamp couldn't withstand the pressure. And the number of people who have the ability to do this can be counted on one hand. Is it Dao Ancestor Wang? It's possible, but there's no evidence. Zhang Zipei nodded. Apart from Dao Ancestor Wang, it's also possible that it's the 4 emperors who are ranked below him. As he spoke, he tested the keyhole with the wire. After a while, he opened the sealed palace gate and led Lotus Sun in. I remember that I'm going to see a great emperor later. Lotus Sun asked as she followed behind. It's the Great East Emperor. Zhang Zizi replied, and then a hint of suspicion appeared on his face. Strange, Miss Sun didn't get any of her memories. Not at all. I can only deduce from this injured body that it has just gone through a great battle, and this body's original memories have not entered my mind at all. Strange. When I entered the white-robed general manager's body, his memories were synchronized with mine. Sigh, that's not all. I noticed that Ing has also disappeared. Lotus Sun sighed. Sun Yinger. That Void Master. Your shadow. Yes. I'm afraid, it won't be easy. Zhang Zizi frowned and suddenly felt the complexity of the problem. What do you mean? There is a very low but terrifying possibility. Zhang Xian whispered, could it be that Goddess Jiao Yang's physical body and spiritual consciousness are separated and synchronized? What Senior Zhang means is that Ying inherited that memory, and I only inherited this body. That's what I mean. Zhang Zizi nodded. If that's the case, it'll be especially troublesome. This means that before we leave this world, we have to find Miss Ying, otherwise we'll change the course of history. According to historical records, Goddess Jiao Yang was burned to ashes in front of everyone in the Eastern Territory by the Great East Emperor Supreme Light Mahamayuri. Since then, there are no historical records, but the truth is that Goddess Jiao Yang is still alive. Furthermore, she will be imprisoned in the Great East Emperor's imperial palace for a very long time, never to leave again. Even so, her soul and body have never been separated. If we leave her alone, I'm afraid it'll cause other variables in the future. As Lotus Sun listened to Zhang Zizi's analysis, her expression became more and more solemn. She hadn't wanted to cause trouble for him, but she hadn't expected her momentary willfulness to actually lead to this situation. This is an inevitability of history. Miss Sun, you don't have to blame yourself or be nervous. We still have a final trump card, don't we? At that moment, Zhang Zizi comforted her. Back in the day, this godly thief had also been a Casanova who had gone around flirting, and he had more or less persecuted all the attractive young women and girls of the ancient ages. Not to mention the thoughts of a little girl like Lotus Sunday. Even if her face was bandaged, Zhang Zizi could read it in her eyes. It was too easy to understand. The trump card that Senior Zhang is talking about, is it student Wang Ling? Who else could it be but Ling Jinren? Zhang Zizi laughed bitterly. Miss Sun and that Daoist you discovered the mysterious text on the white wall earlier, and Ling Jinren told you not to get involved. If Ling Jinren investigated the text, I think there's an 80 to 90% chance that he's also entered this world. He's playing a certain role. So the key now is to find Ling Jinren. But Ling Jinren doesn't talk much, so it'll be too difficult to tell which one is Ling Jinren. Zhang Zizi's head hurt. For example, in the werewolf game, there were always newbie players who were clumsy with their mouths. They got their identity cards but didn't know how to analyze the situation, so they stayed silent for the entire game. In the end, they held their identity cards and were beaten by the wolves. Since entering the modern cultivation world, Zhang Zizi had also become addicted to werewolf games, and meeting this type of silent teammate in a werewolf game was often the most frustrating thing to do. Let's go in first. For now, we can only think of another way. Zhang Zizi sighed as he suddenly felt that the difficulty of this game had skyrocketed. He took Lotus Sun to the interior of the palace, which was originally East Great Emperor's spare Yangxin Palace Hall. It was usually sealed off, and only Yiren had the key. So Zhang Zizi actually had a key on him, but it didn't matter to him whether or not he had the key. Because no matter what kind of lock it was, his iron wire could open it. For Zhang Zizi, the iron wire was a master key. This was a secret meeting. Zhang Zizi took Lotus Sun to the designated place and then put down the gauze curtain on the side. Behind the gauze curtain, Lotus Sun's figure looked hazy and indistinct, as if East Great Emperor had summoned some concubine. No one would have thought that behind the gauze curtain was the blazing sun goddess who had turned to ashes in front of everyone. At that moment, Zhang Zizi rang the bell, and a palace maid entered the palace hall with a tray on which was an exquisite jade porcelain pot. However, this palace maid's walking posture was very strange, as if she was very uncomfortable with the weight of her chest, and she was limping. You're tuning in to the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.